Chapter 1901 Let's Bet. Harrison also did not expect Georgina to reject his recommendation. However, when he saw her looking down like an abused kitten, her eyelashes trembling, he could not help but sympathize with her. "I think there must have been times when you loved trying new things," Harrison started. Georgina thought that Harrison would continue to persuade her like how others would, and throw out a bunch of reasons to convince her. She had even decided to leave straight away the moment he spoke. However, she did not expect that he neither persuaded her, nor reasoned with her. She looked up at him, and felt the gentleness in his gaze. It was not like the glaring rays of the sun, but like the warm fireplace. Although it was not stunning, it was warm enough. After a slight hesitation, she nodded. Yes. There was a time when she loved trying new things. Then, no matter how busy her father was, there would always be a day when his time belonged to her. She would always bring him around the streets of Chaos City to try all the things she had never tried before. There were those which were delicious and those which were not. However, as long as it was new, she would be curious to try it out. "I like it too. Whether it's interesting things, interesting places, or interesting food, as long as it's something I haven't tried, I would always give it a go." Harrison smiled brightly, as though he was very happy that there was something similar between the two of them. Georgina replied softly. Although she did not carry on the conversation, she felt as though the two of them had gotten closer. "Let's not talk about somewhere far away. In Mamie restaurant, whenever Boss Mag launches a new dish, no matter what it is and no matter what others remark or guess about it, I will always order a serving without any hesitation. What others say does not count. I have to try it for myself for it to be real. If I missed out on a delicacy, that would be such a loss," Harrison continued despite Georgina's silence. Georgina looked at Harrison with increasing curiosity. Back then, she was just like him. She would always feel an immense sense of loss if she were to miss out on a delicacy, just like him. "Yesterday, Mamie restaurant was closed for the day, and I swept the whole northern part of the city for street food. I discovered a few eateries that were not bad, but it was a pity those foods weren't filling. Today, when the restaurant opened for operation, Boss Mag announced that he would be launching a new dish again. That's really a pleasant surprise." Harrison smiled brightly, and looked at Georgina as he said, "Miss Georgina, let's bet." Harrison had made Georgina relax unknowingly. Upon hearing what Harrison said, Georgina could not help but be curious. Harrison said, "Boss Mag is launching a new dish called Mapo Tofu today. Let's bet and have a guess at what kind of dish it is. The loser must promise the winner something." "Mapo Tofu," Georgina repeated softly. "This name sounds strange. What's the link between tofu and tofu pudding? What is Mapo? Is it a person? Or a herb?" A million thoughts flashed past her mind. It was just the name of a dish, but it made her very curious. "Don't worry. I will not raise anything overboard, but for your request, anything will do as long as I can do it," Harrison said with a smile. "Would you be willing to play this game with me?" Georgina looked at Harrison's smile, and although the answer she had in her heart was a rejection, she somehow nodded her head. "In that case, I'll start guessing first. I am guessing that this dish must be spicy, and it must be spicy and numbing. However, it's made with tofu pudding. It must be quite a delicious snack," Harrison said excitedly. After that, he looked at Georgina, and asked, "Miss Georgina, what kind of dish do you think it is?" Georgina opened her mouth, and realized that she seemed to have fallen into Harrison's gentle trap. He had been eating here every day, so he would definitely know this restaurant and the chef better than her. This was her first time here, and she had completely no idea about the restaurant and chef's style. Guessing based on just the name of the dish was not easy at all. However, looking at Harrison, the competitiveness within her which had disappeared long ago started awakening. She thought for a while, opened the menu, and found the mapo tofu in the stir-fried dishes section very quickly. In a white porcelain plate, there were white cubes submerged in bright red gravy. It was decorated with bits of minced meat and fresh chopped green onions. It looked really enticing. Georgina stared at the picture for a while, then looked up at Harrison, and said, "I think it must be a dish that will make you eat a lot of rice. It looks like we have completely different guesses. I think it is a snack that is suitable to eat on its own, while you think that it's a dish that has to go with rice. In that case, there will be a clear winner." Harrison nodded. Georgina was rather confident. Based on her past experiences, this dish had to have rather extreme taste. It would not be a good choice to have it as a snack alone. However, with rice, one would definitely be able to wolf down a lot of it. "Can I have your order, please?" Just then, Yabimiya happened to reach their table. The lady sitting with them ordered a set of sweet tofu pudding and a plate of Yangzhou fried rice. "I want a set of sweet tofu pudding, 2 rigiemos, and a mapo tofu," Harrison said with a smile. After that, he looked at Georgina, and said, "Miss Georgina, I think you should see for yourself who exactly is the winner, right?" Georgina felt something amiss, but at the same time, she wanted to prove to Harrison that she was right. She hesitated for a while, looked at Yabimiya, and said, "I want a set of mapo tofu and a bowl of rice." "All right, please hold on." Yabimiya nodded with a smile. Kenneth looked at Georgina in surprise. This was the first time in 2 years she took the initiative to order food. It even felt unreal to him, and all this was thanks to the young man sitting in front of them. "Sir, what would you like to have?" Yabimiya looked at Kenneth. "I want," Kenneth hesitated for a while, and recalled what Harrison said before. He said, "I would like a set of savory tofu pudding, a set of braised chicken and rice, and a set of eggplant with garlic sauce." Chapter 1902. I'll just have a bite. The feeling of hunger was long gone, and she was not interested in any food. She even felt repulsed by food. Now, she actually ordered a set of mapo tofu for herself. She fell silent for a while, and was about to find an explanation for this situation. "Your eyes are very beautiful," Harrison said seriously as he looked into her eyes, interrupting her thoughts. Georgina was stunned, and she quickly blushed. Her eyes were of a pale purple color, and she had been praised for her eyes by many ever since she was young. If there was anything that could be praised about her right now, it seemed like it would only be her eyes. Only, people could not see her eyes most of the time. And for these 2 years, other than her father, it seemed only Harrison had told her that. "Thank you." Georgina smiled meekly. It was a foreign feeling, but she could not help but feel warm inside. She smiled. Kenneth also smiled. However, he started looking at Harrison with a more complicated feeling. This fatty actually flirted with his daughter right in front of him. However, he could not stop him. Harrison looked at the smile that flashed across Georgina's face, and felt encouraged. He asked, "Miss Georgina, you must have grown up in Chaos City, right?" Georgina nodded. "In that case, you must know SAHDR Alley 10 years ago, that was the place where all the eateries and snacks gathered in Chaos City. It was the source of almost all novelty snacks, which would then spread to all the streets, alleys, and food stalls. But that's where you could get the most authentic taste. I know that place." Georgina could not help but raise her voice a little. When she was young, she stayed near SAHDR Alley, the heaven of her childhood. Every day when she was released from Chaos School, she would go to SAHDR Alley for some snacks first. Thinking back, it was already more than 10 years ago. Back then, her mother was the one who would fetch her from school. Her mother was the world's gentlest mother who would be willing to eat everything with her. "I made a trip to SAHDR Alley a few days ago, and there were not many of those eateries left. I heard that most of them had moved to Aiden Square, and some of them had closed down. I doubt it'll be easy to find the tastes of our childhood anymore, Harrison said with a sigh. They're gone. Georgina could not hide the disappointment in her eyes. She had always gone to Sitter Alley once in a while in the past, but not in the recent 2 years. She did not know that it had already declined. Harrison looked at Georgina with a smile. Sitter Alley might have declined, but the snacks with a classic taste can withstand the test of time. If you want to eat them again, I can bring you around the streets and alleys to look for them again. We will definitely find them. Georgina looked at Harrison. There was a ray of light. There seemed to be a crack in her sealed-up heart, and the ray of light had shone in through the crack. Ahem, if you don't mind, I can join you too. Kenneth could not hold himself back. He let out a dry cough to make his presence known. Georgina looked away with a blush. She lowered her gaze, and did not reply to Harrison further. Uncle, if you are willing to go, there will be no problem about that. Harrison was not shy at all. However, it was not very appropriate to flirt with the man's daughter in front of him. However, Miss Georgina smiled and talked to him. She even ordered a set of mapo tofu. That was not a bad start. Now, what he was worried about was whether the mapo tofu would fail him. After all, the savory tofu pudding was rejected. The most important thing was whether the first bite of mapo tofu would capture her heart or make her put her chopsticks down. The temporary silence was interrupted by the dishes being served. Please enjoy. Yabimiya placed the dishes on the table, and left with a smile. Meanwhile, Georgina appeared to be attracted by the mapo tofu, which was giving off a tingling spicy scent. On a white porcelain plate were small cubes of tofu submerged in a bright red gravy. Amidst the red and white were some minced meat and fresh chopped green onions sprinkled on top. The bright color made the dish look delectable. Georgina kept telling herself, I don't want to eat. I just want to prove that I'm right. That's all. However, the fragrance and steam of the spiciness kept wafting over and tempting her. Her desire to eat, which had been sealed for a long time, was like baby shoots in spring, peeking out of the soil under the attack of the fragrance. Her psychological resistance to food seemed weak and fragile before this strong attack. The color looks very vibrant, and I can already smell the spiciness. The shape of this tofu is firmer compared to the tofu pudding. The taste, however, Harrison looked at Georgina with a smile, and said, Miss Georgina, why don't we both give it a try, and see who exactly has gotten it right? I'm only giving it a taste, Georgina said seriously. After that, she picked up a spoon, and scooped up a piece of tofu. The small cube of tofu had obvious edges, and was covered in the thick red gravy. The minced meat and chopped green onions as decorations made it look even more enticing. Georgina swallowed. She was actually secretly looking forward to tasting it. This was a very peculiar feeling. The last time she had actually looked forward to eating had been probably more than 2 years ago. For the past 2 years, there had been almost nothing that could make her excited. Perhaps it was because the smell of this mapo tofu was really too enticing. Perhaps, it was because the person sitting in front of her had warmed her heart and stomach, making her feel that there were still beautiful things in this world. She blew on it, and after it appeared to have cooled down, Georgina put it into her mouth. Hot! The moment the tofu entered her mouth, the scalding sensation caught Georgina off guard. Although the surface temperature had decreased significantly, the interior of the tofu was still as hot as when it was just taken out of the pot. That made her shudder. She stopped herself from spitting out the tofu, and opened her mouth to take deep breaths to cool down the tofu. That was when the taste of the mapo tofu came in. The soft and tender tofu melted in her mouth immediately. The minced meat also disintegrated the moment she bit into it. The numbness, spiciness, freshness, fragrance, and tenderness exploded in her mouth instantly, bringing her taste buds back to life. Her taste buds that did not know what was flavor anymore were hit with a strong attack without any warning, wave after wave without stopping. Georgina closed her eyes slightly, but still could not help but let a moan escape her mouth. Chapter 1903 Can't Stop. Yes. She could not help but welcome its beautiful taste. Irresistible. This was unlike any food she had eaten before. The taste and texture were very unique, and it totally thrashed all the delicacies in her memory. The authentic numbing taste triggered her heart and stomach. The hot tofu, coated with a layer of fragrant spiciness, brought about a very strong attack. That attack was something no other food had made her feel. The tiny crack in her heart was torn apart at that moment to allow an even bigger ray of light to shine in. At that moment, she felt as though she had seen a small, crowded alley that was lined with different food stalls. The crowd weaved through the stalls to try different food. Meanwhile, she also saw a gentle woman holding a little girl in a red shirt in the crowd. She was eating gracefully with the little girl, and there was a smile on her face all the time. After swallowing the mapo tofu, Georgina's forehead was already covered with beads of perspiration, and there were also tears in the corner of her eyes. "Are you all right?" Harrison asked with concern. It was just too spicy." Georgina avoided Harrison's eyes. The warm and spicy tofu slid down her throat and transformed into a ball of warmth, spreading throughout her body. This was when the spiciness started to show its prowess. Georgina quickly took a mouthful of rice. The soft and fluffy rice was particularly refreshing. The more she chewed, the sweeter it tasted. It was very good to suppress the spiciness brought about by the mapo tofu. "This rice is very delicious too." Georgina looked at the rice in disbelief. The rice had longer seeds than what she usually had. The grains of rice had a similar shape, and were translucent. After swallowing the rice, she could not help but stare at the mapo tofu. The numbing spiciness was addictive and irresistible. "I'll just have one more bite." Last bite. Georgina stared at the mapo tofu, and gave herself a pep talk. After that, she picked up her spoon, and scooped up another piece of tofu. This time, she was not eager to put it in her mouth. Instead, she blew on it carefully for a while, and then she was still scalded. Sometimes, that was also a very blissful thing. The taste of the mapo tofu danced at the tip of her tongue. Georgina closed her eyes, and a tear rolled down the corner of her eyes. "It's too blissful. This feeling is really too blissful." For more than 2 years, she had been living in the shadows. At this moment, she felt enveloped by the warm sun once again. Actually, it was not food that she hated, but herself in the past. But now, she knew that the one she should not hate the most was still herself. "It's delicious." She swallowed the tofu with tears welling up in her eyes, and then had a mouthful of rice again. Georgina had already tossed away her burdens and worries completely. She put another spoonful of mapo tofu into her mouth. The refreshing, numbing spiciness made her take bite after bite without stopping. "It seems, this dish really goes very well with rice." Harrison looked at the scene, and smiled. He swallowed everything he wanted to say. Although he had lost, it felt as though he had won too. In any case, he was happy to be able to see Georgina eat. Kenneth looked at Georgina eating happily, and that big, bald, tattooed middle-aged man had tears in his eyes. It had been 2 years. He finally saw Georgina pick up a spoon on her own and start eating. For all those sleepless nights, he wanted to ask someone for help, what to do if your child refuses to eat. The worry that had made his hair white had been solved at this moment. After that, he looked at Harrison a little warily but with admiration. If it were not for this little fatty today, he might not be able to make Georgina eat anything. However, if Harrison wanted to woo Georgina, Kenneth would never agree to it so easily. Ding! Her spoon touched the bottom of the rice bowl. She had almost finished her bowl of rice, but there was still a lot of mapo tofu left. Georgina was slightly stunned. Immediately, she blushed. She, actually finished a bowl of rice. "I haven't touched my bowl of rice yet." Why don't you have it first? Harrison pushed her bowl to Georgina with a smile. Georgina looked at Harrison, and then at that bowl of rice. She suddenly smiled at Harrison, and said, "Thank you." After that, she picked up her spoon and continued eating. Does it really go so well with rice? Harrison got Yabimiya to get him another bowl of rice. He scooped up a spoonful of mapo tofu, and put it into his mouth curiously. Although the mapo tofu had been served for quite a while, it still managed to scald him. The tofu melted in his mouth and the numbing spiciness exploded in his mouth. He was caught off guard by that assailing deliciousness. Who after swallowing the mapo tofu, Harrison opened his mouth and breathed out. The numbing spiciness filled his entire mouth. Right now, all he wanted was a bowl of rice. In the kitchen, Mag watched Georgina eat, and could not help but exclaim, "Harrison does have some tricks up his sleeve." Firas, who was plating the food, turned back to ask, "What did you say?" "Nothing. I said I need to apply another layer of sauce on the kebabs," Mag said with a smile as he looked away. Making an anorexic person regain her desire to eat was something he could do, but making her walk out of the shadows would require Harrison to put in more effort. After finishing the second bowl of rice, the mapo tofu was also almost gone. Burp! Georgina let out an unfulfilled burp. After that, she covered her mouth with embarrassment. Harrison, who started eating later, put his spoon down almost at the same time. He looked at Georgina with a smile, and said, "It's very obvious that you won. This mapo tofu is indeed a dish that goes very well with rice. It's not suitable to be eaten as a snack on its own." Georgina replied softly. Her smile showed that she was in a pretty good mood. "I lost. I can accede to a request from you." Harrison looked at Georgina seriously. "What would you like me to do?" Georgina lowered her head, and thought for a while. She looked up at Harrison as though she had made a very important decision, and said, "Can you accompany me to find those street foods?" She tightly gripped the corner of her shirt, and looked away quickly, as though she was waiting for her sentence. Harrison was slightly stunned. After that, he smiled and nodded as he said, "Sure. I can go with you anytime. Just call me." Georgina looked at Harrison, and her eyes lit up. A smile blossomed on her pale face. She found the light again. A ray of light that was willing to shine on her. Chapter 1904 Matchmaker's Red Packet +1. However, what made him happy was that Harrison could find the lady that he liked, and was willing to care for and protect her, to bring her out of her shadow and her pain. That was also a good deed in itself. The mapo tofu is a good thing indeed. Mag laughed. He kept the red packet carefully and looked left and right. After making sure that Irina was not around, he let out a sigh of relief. The existence of delicacies was to make people enjoy eating. If he could unknowingly change these people's lives, that would make him feel that cooking was a very beautiful thing. As a dish that went really well with rice, mapo tofu had garnered good reviews from the customers. It also caused the rice to sell really well today. "Georgina, why don't we go skiing?" Kenneth told Georgina pamperingly in the horse-drawn carriage. Georgina looked at Kenneth, but did not say anything for a long time. Her father, who used to be a strict and serious father, suddenly seemed to have aged a lot. The hair that peeked out of his head was already white. The wrinkles on his face could be seen clearly. His strong and straight back was slightly bent. All this was because of her. She was so silly to hurt the closest person to her for a person who had never really looked at her before. Georgina felt her nose go sour. She pounced into Kenneth's embrace as she choked up, and said, "Father, I'm sorry." Kenneth's body froze. He looked at Georgina, who was sobbing in his embrace, and smiled. He patted her back gently. There, today is a really good day." Harrison stood beside his horse-drawn carriage, looked up into the sky, and laughed. The coachman peeked his head out, and asked curiously, "Boss, did something good happen today?" "Of course there is something good." Harrison laughed. However, he did not say much to the coachman. He had already made plans with Miss Georgina to go out to Cider Alley to find those famous street foods. He felt as though he had fallen in love. Although he only had a meal with her once, and they did not exchange more than 100 sentences, he was already certain that she was the one. "Go back first. I'll be walking around Aden Square this afternoon. I'll give you half a day off," Harrison said to the coachman as he waved his hand. After that, he sauntered off. Although he had made plans with Miss Georgina to seek the food out tomorrow, he still decided to recon the place so that he could perform well tomorrow. This was the first time he had such a strong urge to be in a relationship ever since he became an adult. Being in a relationship was no small matter. Many times, it was a plot that had been planned for a long time. Therefore, men should be even more careful outside. The various representatives gathered in Chaos City, and were discussing the joint investigation at the meeting room. Sean was the leader of the Roth Empire's representative team. Lewis and Douglas from the giant dragon tribes had also arrived, showing how much importance they placed on this matter. The various representatives had sent out their 10th-tier powerhouses as representatives. The devil escaping from the seal was no small matter. "Why aren't Alex and Irina here?" Douglas asked Michael. The various representatives also looked at Michael. Alex and Irina were the ones who raised this matter, and now that the various representatives had gathered, they were the only ones missing. "I would only manage to meet those two once in a while." Michael shook his head and smiled. After that, he got someone to switch on the projector to show the representatives what Mag had captured in the cave that day. The expressions on the various representatives' faces turned serious. Most of them had seen, with their eyes, the seal in the Thunderstorm Mountains, so they were very clear what that ruined stone door and pieces of the seal from the spell formation meant. It was indeed traces left behind by a giant dragon. "I'm afraid Rankster is the only frost dragon that was capable of that," Lewis said solemnly. Everyone looked at Douglas. This great elder of the frost dragon tribe had the most say. Douglas remained silent for a while. He sighed, and said, "Rankster had disappeared 3 years ago, and there was no news of him until today." This was no secret at all. Rankster and Alex disappeared almost at the same time, and that caused many speculations. Michael said, "Alex said that there was only one frost dragon scale found on site. He did not discover Rankster's corpse. Everyone has to go over there to unravel the mystery of what happened at the sealed land." "In that case, why don't we set off now and take a look at the sealed land before making a decision?" Sean said. "That's true. Let's set off, then." Michael nodded. He stood up and led the various representatives to the front yard. Not long later, various flying steeds flew off from the city lord's castle and out of the city. In the textile factory in the northern part of the city, Ashley walked into Irina's office. She looked at Irina, who was studying a blueprint, and said, "Your Highness, the construction team is formed. There are a total of 3,000 elves. 300 of them will be in charge of supplying the materials. The first batch of wood planted last night is ready to use." "Fantastic." Irina put the blueprint down, and looked at Ashley as she said, "When the school is built, we'll not disband the team. We might very well be able to get other construction offers. The dwarves are destined to only be able to do manual work because of their standard of beauty, but we can do delicate work." "All right." Ashley nodded. She had no doubts about Irina's decision at all. After moving to Chaos City, the Night Elves had already passed through the initial difficult stages, and now Irina was arranging for them to get employment so that they could blend into Chaos City. During this process, Irina had made many intelligent decisions. As the person executing the plans, Ashley would obey completely. All of a sudden, Irina looked up at the sky outside of the window and thought for a while. She stood up, and said, "I'll make a trip out. You can take a look at the blueprint first." After saying that, Irina disappeared. For the entire morning, Luna visited more than 10 retired teachers. Almost all of them expressed their willingness to return to teaching upon hearing her intentions. "Thank you so much, please, go back and have a rest." Luna walked out of a mathematics teacher's house with a smile, and helped him close the door. The 15th teacher. That's unexpectedly smooth. Luna took out a small notebook and flipped it open. She put a small tick beside a name, and there were dozens of names that she had yet to visit. Indeed, teachers had the greatest love for children. They would not reject almost anything that was within their capabilities. 2 of the teachers were not in the best of health, so Luna did not raise this with them. It was best for one to do things within their capabilities. The next teacher is Teacher Kakashi. I wonder if he'd have gone to sleep by the time I arrived. Luna bought a couple of pancakes from the roadside stall, and started eating them with the water she brought with her as she planned her afternoon itinerary. Mag told them clearly that it was limited to the delicacy extravaganza, and everyone could go back home to learn it, or wait till next year's delicacy extravaganza, where it might appear again. It was a very sneaky but effective method. On top of that, the octopus tentacle series dishes other than the octopus balls were all very simple and quick to make. Judging from the ever-increasing number of fans, it seemed like those dishes would soon become a common home-cooked dish in Chaos City. It was so worth it to spend only a few copper coins to taste a dish that would cost a few hundred copper coins in a restaurant. On top of that, the taste would be similar. What a steal! Of course, if the customers could profit from it, Mag, who sold the octopus tentacles, would never lose money from it. On his way back to the restaurant, Mag was dragged away by the excited Hannah. "I refuse." Before Mag could even voice his refusal, Hannah had already pulled out a thick gold pipe. She looked at Mag, and said excitedly, "Boss, we've succeeded. A high-quality seal pipe. It can withstand the high pressure of the steam. This will definitely not blow up. Not bad." Mag studied the pipe closely and nodded. After that, he glanced at the different parts placed on the floor with a smile, and asked, "Almost done? We can start assembling the machine tomorrow. Boss Mabai found me a very skillful craftsman to help me with the assembly. There will be no problem for sure." Hannah nodded happily. Although she had 2 dark eye circles, and was smeared with carbon and dust, they did not affect her beauty at all. "I'll make a trip there tomorrow," Mag said. He was really worried about Hannah. This blueprint was provided by him. As long as the craftsmanship and sizes were right, there should be no problem. However, to be safe, he would still go over to take a look. "That's great." Hannah smiled widely, revealing her 2 neat rows of teeth. The thought of remaking her self-brewed wine in Chaos City at an even bigger scale with a more advanced brewery made it difficult for Hannah to contain her excitement. "It's been hard on you, Boss Mabai and Lulu." Mag greeted the 2 who were forging the metal parts in the workshop. "Hee, it's not hard with Boss Mag's young Joe fried rice," Mabai said with a chuckle as he wiped his perspiration away. While they were rushing out the work for the past few days, Hannah had been the one bringing them takeaway food so that they did not have to line up. "When we're done with work, let's gather for a few glasses." Mag loved honest people. He did not further disturb them in their work, and returned to the restaurant. There was information about Rankster from the Grey Temple in the study room. Rankster was once known to be the archenemy of Alex and the Chosen One in the Frost Dragon tribe. There were many legendary stories about him. Therefore, there was much information about him in the Grey Temple Informations Department. There were no traces or clues left behind with regard to the case of the broken Great Old One seal. Meanwhile, Rankster had become the only point of breakthrough for it. However, he had disappeared 3 years ago, and the only way was to try to find some related clues from all the information, which would take more than an hour to go through. Mag did not find any relevant information to the Great Old Ones. Instead, he understood the whole of Rankster's life. He was indeed a tough character. He was an illegitimate son of the Golden Dragon tribe and the Frost Dragon tribe, and was not well liked. Furthermore, he was seen as the lowest class mixed-blood dragon, but managed to be reborn in adversity. That was when he showed everyone what he was capable of. His hands were stained with blood from countless people as he climbed onto the throne of the Frost Dragon tribe. If he was the main character, this story could become a very exciting drama on a passionate Dragon King. Rankster even lived in Chaos City for a period of time decades ago. However, there was no detailed recording, so he probably hid his identity back then. This was actually very interesting. Decades ago, Rankster was already the chief of the Frost Dragon tribe. He was the person in power, and not a puppet of the elders. He could have just assumed his identity. Why did he conceal himself and come to Chaos City? Is he dead, or is he trapped somewhere? Or maybe he was controlled. Mag placed the information back into the box with a tightly knit frown. Judging from Rankster's personality, it was impossible for him to be hiding somewhere. Unless, his current situation was somewhat like mine back then? He was also severely injured. Mag suddenly thought of a possibility. Rankster had made countless enemies, way more than Alex. There were even people from the Frost Dragon tribe who wished he was dead. There were too many people who wanted him dead in this world. He could not allow himself to even be weak. He had to protect his wife and children with his undying will. Therefore, even though he had disappeared for 3 years with no news at all, and the Frost Dragon throne had been empty, no one dared to do anything to Elizabeth directly. What a headache! Mag stood up and scratched his head. He still could not find a way out. Ding! Congratulations for gaining more than 10,000 believers. Success in upgrading to Master Chef. Just then, the system's voice rang in Mag's head. Mag paused in his actions. He suddenly felt a miraculous power start pouring in from the top of his head. He felt as though his spiritual energy had increased. This felt like enlightenment, and it was very miraculous. Is this the power of a master chef? Mag clenched his fists slowly. After a while, he rolled his eyes, and said, "Why don't I feel anything?" Although he did feel enlightened, Mag did not feel that there was any substantial increase in his powers. Please feel it with your heart. The power of a chef is not just a pure increment of strength. It will also be displayed in other aspects. The system's voice rang again. Could it be that I can flip dishes in the wok faster? Mag cocked his brow. He did not really buy what the system said. Reward for upgrade has been released, Affinity +1, the system said again. This time, Mag felt a cooling sensation at his crown. His slightly spiked up hairstyle was pressed down by something, but he still did not feel anything. Just that. Mag's brows were knit even tighter together. He felt cheated. Affinity is a form of charisma. It will also not display any obvious advantage or disadvantage to you physically, the system explained. Then I'd rather some place that should be longer grow longer. Mag pressed his lips together. In any case, he felt cheated. If you don't believe me, go outside and take a look. Fine. I'll go out and take a look. What's the big deal? Mag walked down the stairs, opened the door, and went out. A young lady was standing at the restaurant door, seemingly looking at the restaurant's notice. The door opened outwards and caused a rush of air towards her, causing her skirt to fly up. According to the speed of free fall, the skirt would probably have fallen back in place. Mag opened his eyes, and looked at the lady who took 2 steps back in shock while holding her skirt down. Vivian. Mag finally saw the lady clearly. After that, he was relieved. At least it was someone he knew. Boss Mag, you're actually someone like that. Vivian pressed her skirt as she looked at Mag with shock and embarrassment in front of the restaurant door. My apologies, Miss Vivian. I did not expect you to be standing outside the door. However, don't worry. I closed my eyes just now, and didn't see anything at all, Miss said apologetically. He was indeed in the wrong. Something like this was very serious to ladies. Vivian looked at Mag's sincere expression, and felt her anger subside significantly. She thought for a while. Boss Mag had never really gone close to ladies. He had always maintained a decent distance and shown ladies basic respect. He was not the kind who would do something lowly. Besides, she was appearing rather strange to be standing at his door. Therefore, Vivian let go of her skirt, and said unnaturally, "All right, we'll let this pass. We'll let this pass." Mag was shocked. He thought he had to come up with a good explanation, like why the wind was so strong, or why there would be an upward wind when the door was pushed open. He did not expect Vivian to let it pass after just glancing at him. Could this be the so-called affinity +1? Mag raised his brow with uncertainty. "I wonder if I can help you with anything, seeing that you are here at the restaurant at this hour." Mag changed the topic for her. "Yes, I am here to look for you." Vivian nodded. "Hey! I heard that you and Luna are building a new school. Can I be a teacher there?" Vivian went straight to the point. "If I didn't remember wrongly, you seem to have applied to teach at Chaos School, right?" Mag was a little shocked. Vivian nodded. "Yes. However, I've decided to give up on Chaos School and join your new school." "You didn't make it, Boss Mag." Vivian blushed. She was rather embarrassed, but still said with her head held high, "I was just that 1 or 2 points away. Teacher Luna is in charge of hiring teachers. She looks at one's responsibility to the children. I think there would be an assessment and interview. You can apply for it first." Mag smiled. However, Vivian was a very outstanding lady. There should not be a problem for her to become a teacher. "I see. I should have just gone to Luna." Vivian nodded and waved goodbye to Mag. "Bye, Boss Mag." "Bye." Mag watched Vivian leave in the horse-drawn carriage. Their team was expanding rapidly, and that was a good thing. After seeing Vivian leave, Mag went out to walk around the streets. Although he did not have heads turning or girls screaming at him, Mag could feel the obvious kinder looks at him from passers-by, and even stray cats and dogs would wag their tails at him. It looks like that's the so-called affinity +1. Mag returned to the restaurant, deep in thought. Such upgrades in charisma were indeed invisible. That was an ability that should be treasured. Human interactions and first impressions could determine many things in the future. If you were unable to give another person a positive first impression, that would mean that no one would be interested to know you no matter how talented you were. On top of that, a higher affinity would mean that it would be easier to be liked by others and to build trust with people. This is simply an ability custom-made for sales. Mag stroked his chin. So far, this seemed to be the advantage he felt from the God of Cookery system training. Besides, this ability was rather useful to him as of now. He wanted to get more fans and thus level up in the culinary realm. Having a higher affinity would make it easier for him to gain fans. Interesting. Mag nodded. He was already thinking of changing the video at the delicacy extravaganza with a new one. Just as he closed the door, a stunning white light shone in the middle of the restaurant. After that, a silhouette rose with a table on top. "Hey!" Their gazes met, and they were both stunned. "Boss, stop staring. Help me get the table on my head off," Babla said angrily at Mag. "All right." Mag removed the table on Babla's head with a smile. To be honest, if she had lowered her head for a while, the table would not have been on her head. Babla, who had changed into a pink dress, rubbed her head and kicked the table. After that, she looked around and asked, "They're all not around?" They're all in Mia's shop." Mag nodded. Babla looked at Mag and sized him up. She felt as though he looked a little different. However, she could not put her finger on it. She frowned and thought for a while before asking, "Have you showered?" You can tell. Mag frowned. He felt that her questions were a little strange. No, it was just a random greeting. I'll go look for them. Babla quickly realized that her question sounded weird. She blushed and escaped out of the door. After opening the door, she came back within 3 seconds. She closed the door and breathed out some cold air. She shuddered and exclaimed, "It's so cold. Why is it still winter? It already was when you left. You've only left for a few days. Were you thinking that it would become summer the moment you were back?" Mag rolled his eyes. He looked at Babla, who was dressed in a thin dress, and laughed. The Moon Nation is really hot right now. Who knew that it would still be so cold here? Babla stomped her foot angrily, or maybe because she was too cold. "Put this on and go. Remember to bring it back tonight." Mag went up to get a coat, and put it on Babla. The mid-length trench coat almost reached her ankles. "It's so warm." Babla suddenly felt like she could do everything again. She thanked Mag and went out. "Babla has returned. Our new help request should be here soon too. Looks like the Moon Nation will be tied closely to the Norland continent." Mag smiled. As long as the various representatives could ascertain that the Great Old One had broken through the seal and escaped, how to find and reseal it would only be a matter of time. The Great Old One could not be killed, so they could only seal it back to temporarily stop it before finding other ways to kill it, for example, by eating it up. During dinner, Babla brought specialty gifts from the Moon Nation, and gave them to everyone. Other than the glistening jewelry, there were also the interesting, irregular-shaped moonstones that gave off a soft, silver glow. "Polish this up a little. I want to make it into a moonstone ring. It looks better than a jade ring," Yabimiya said equally happily after choosing a round moonstone. "You guys actually like this stone so much?" Babla looked at everyone with a strange expression. "Babla, this moonstone must be very precious, right?" Firas asked Babla shyly. I just grabbed a handful of them from the garden before I left. This kind of stone is just one of those that could be found everywhere at our place." Babla shrugged. She looked at everyone, who was in disbelief, and continued, "I don't know that you guys would actually like this. If I'd known, I would have gotten them to choose a few better-looking ones. Rare things are more precious. This moonstone is of better quality than most jades, and it can even give off its own glow. With a little polishing, it could become a rather good piece of jewelry. However, as there is a lot of it on the moon, it became worthless there." Mag smiled as he picked up a piece of moonstone. "However, you can't find this on the Norland continent. As long as we tag it as imported from the moon, we will definitely be able to fetch a high price. Why don't we sell stones? We'll transport the worthless moonstones on the moon to Chaos City to sell. We'll definitely be able to earn a lot of money," Amy suggested as her eyes lit up. Mag looked at Amy with admiration. This little fellow's brain turned really fast. She had the potential to become a rich businessman at such a young age. Would people really want them? Babla was still rather uncertain. There really was a lot of this stone in Moon Nation. Their floors would usually be laid with mega-sized moonstones, and the quality of those was much better compared to these small stones. "Next time you go back to Moon Nation, bring as many of them as you can. I can guarantee that everything will be sold out. We'll split profits equally between ourselves," Mag said with a smile. The jewelry field was one where one could profit up to hundreds and thousands of folds, especially for the moonstone, with such high quality and low costs. If he did not profit that much, he would even be embarrassed to say that he was selling jewelry. "All right. In that case, I'll choose the best decorative stones next time, and fill up my space magic ring." Babla nodded excitedly. She was not lacking money, but enjoyed making money. "Right, you have to let me know in advance if anyone from the Moon Nation is going to be teleported over. Otherwise, I would feel a lack of security if people keep teleporting to the restaurant." Besides, I've already gotten people to set up some defensive spell formation in the restaurant. If they appear out of nowhere, they might get injured accidentally. Mag did not want to keep seeing people teleport over with a table on their heads like Babla did today. On top of that, the restaurant did have a 9th tier defense capability. If someone from the Moon Nation suddenly teleported over, and started engaging in a fight with the restaurant, it would be a mess. Babla thought for a while, and replied, "All right. However, it's rather troublesome to keep activating the teleportation portal. Why don't we set a time every month? That way, the restaurant's business would not be affected as well." "That'll do too." Mag thought for a while, and nodded in agreement. The most valuable part of Mamie Restaurant right now was not the land that it was on, but rather that it was on the ancient teleportation portal that linked the Moon Nation and Norland continent. This effectively meant that the restaurant was like customs to both sides. If Babla was not the princess of the Moon Nation, Mag would just mark up the price straight away, and make everyone who wanted to use this teleportation portal pay an entrance fee. That would be a faster money-making method than running a restaurant. Right now, both parties were still in their initial exchange stages. Besides, the Norland continent needed the Moon Nation's help to seal the Great Old Ones. He naturally wouldn't do something like that. However, if both parties were to open up a travel project to the Moon, Mag would be more than willing to earn some money from those wealthy people who wanted to go up. "How long do you intend to stay this time?" Mag asked. Now that the passageway to Moon Nation had been cleared, Babla could return home anytime. "I'm back to work. I'll stay until the restaurant closes," Babla said matter-of-factly. "As long as I don't close down the restaurant, Mamie Restaurant will never be closed." Mag pressed his lips together. He looked at Babla with bewilderment, and asked, "Aren't you happy being a princess? Why did you come back to be a service staff member? What's so rare about being a princess? We have so many princesses there." "I went back for a few days, and it was indeed boring to be a princess. Working is better. This place is really good. I love it here." Babla shook her head. "All right, whatever floats your boat." Mag raised his brow. It seemed like times had indeed changed. Working had become the new in thing. Babla's return meant that the manpower shortage in Mamie Restaurant was relieved. With her spatial magic powers, Babla was the cornerstone of the restaurant in terms of serving food. She could send the dishes to the customers very efficiently. Tonight's dinner was quite a feast. Mag prepared it specially to welcome Babla back. Therefore, they had to start half an hour earlier compared to their usual meal time. Outside the restaurant, a line began to form. Among the people in the line was a large man dressed in black. His hat was pressed down very low, and he was hanging his head low as he spoke softly to the middle-aged man standing in front of him in the line. He asked, "Chief Editor Garland, do you think anyone can recognize me like this?" The bald man who was addressed as Chief Editor turned to glance at the man in black, chuckled, and said, "Milo, those who know you could still recognize you with one glance. Those who don't know you won't even take a second glance at you, much less recognize you. That's terrible." Milo was stunned. He looked left and right cautiously. "This is Chaos City. You've never been here before, nor have you exposed any of the restaurants here. You don't have to be worried about getting beaten up," Garland said with a smile. Garland was the chief editor of the gourmet magazine Perfect Food. The magazine was one of the most influential gourmet magazines on the Norland continent, but it had not been doing well recently. Meatitarian and vegetarianism had been breaking the records for 2 to 3 months in a row. This had become normal, and their tens of thousands of sales thrashed Perfect Food completely. And the reason for the sales of meatitarian and vegetarianism to surge in these 2 to 3 months was one restaurant, which was Mamie Restaurant, right in front of them now. Both magazines' new publications for the past 2 months had at least one article related to Mamie Restaurant. With that, their sales shot up, and even many who did not have the habit of reading magazines subscribed to them. Perfect Food was not willing to be a sitting duck after lagging behind by so much. Therefore, Garland brought his best writer from Perfect Food, the gentle assassin, Milo, here. He wanted to break all the lies made by vegetarianism and meatitarian. How could such an outstanding restaurant appear in a place lacking delicacies like Chaos City? Perfect Food would be using an article that would be 100% truthful to pull this restaurant down from the pedestal and thrash those two shameless magazines. A saying in Rodau's food and beverages industry went like this: beware of fire, beware of burglars, beware of Milo. It was said that there were even restaurants that had their reputation tarnished by Milo. There were even those that had privately raised funds to hire an assassin to cut off Milo's writing hand. Such news had been circulating in Rodau's gourmet circle. This had caused Milo to always dress himself up unusually whenever he left his house. However, his frame was too eye-catching, and his purposeful dressing made him easy to notice. Thankfully, although he had been assailed by rotten eggs a few times, he still had not met the assassin that was coming for his hand. Milo's articles had a clear stand, and that was to use the strictest attitude to rate a restaurant. It was not criticism for the sake of criticism. Therefore, he had gained quite a lot of fans. His column was also the most popular column in Perfect Food. Many chowhounds even used his column as a guide to avoiding pitfalls. Rodau was known as the city of delicacies with the highest number of restaurants on the Norland continent. Their development in delicacies was not something the other races could compare to. As for Chaos City, it was not even too much to say that Chaos City was the death town of delicacies. For a city that had only flourished for 100 years, made up of people from all races who had brought their specialty foods with them, this meant that none of the core cuisines had been brought over. Actually, Milo had been to Chaos City 10 years ago. However, the restaurants here were really a disappointment. He almost had no will to even lift his pen. Therefore, even Garland felt that Milo had never been to Chaos City. This time, Milo returned to Chaos City because of this rising star in the gourmet circle, Mamie restaurant. He had seen some of the articles in meatitarian and vegetarianism. Derek and Randy rose to popularity because they wrote about Mamie restaurant. They became the highest paid food critics overnight. Milo was not jealous. He just did not like how they idealized and magicalized their description of Mamie restaurant with their words. As for the food, he would not believe that food as delicious as they described would exist in this world. A lotus would not suddenly bloom in a death town. Milo stood by his beliefs. Therefore, he came this time to expose Mamie restaurant. Meatitarian and vegetarianism were incorrigible. They were very influential magazines. If they were to cheat people into traveling all the way to Chaos City, only to leave them disappointed, that would be terrible. Milo looked around. The restaurant door was shut tightly, but a line had already formed long ago. Such scenes were rare even in Rodau. This would only happen when famous restaurants had sales going on. Are these actors? Milo observed the people in the line carefully. Finding actors to build the atmosphere, and therefore attract unknowing customers, were no new tactics. He had exposed many businesses which did that, causing such evil practices to die down. However, after close observation, Milo was even more puzzled. The actors for restaurants would usually be poor people, and he would be able to tell from their clothing. Even if the businesses gave them clothes to wear, a person's aura could not be concealed by their clothes. It was said that Mamie restaurant had an expensive menu, and their main target audience was high-end customers. From the looks of these customers in the line, be it their clothing or their aura, it did seem like they were this group of people. After that, he listened closely to their conversation. Some of them were just engaged in small talk, but most of them were talking about delicacies, mostly from Mamie restaurant. Hey, have you tried the mapo tofu newly launched by Boss Mag? I didn't get to try it in the afternoon. What did it taste like? Is there really mapo inside? I didn't see mapo, but the taste, tisk, tisk. Forget it. You should try it for yourself later on. I think I can't describe its goodness with my limited vocabulary. In any case, it's the best dish to go with rice. Tofu pudding, of course you have to eat the sweet one. Such a lively atmosphere made Milo blank out for a while. For a food lover, this would probably be the ideal atmosphere. On top of that, the line was very orderly, and there was a comfortable distance between everyone. This made conversing even more comfortable. These people aren't actors, Milo told Garland softly. I can tell. Rich people would never line up for so long for peanuts. Neither would they be involved in such a fervent discussion with others. Garland nodded. He had a complicated expression. This appeared to be quite different from what they expected. Let me try to sound them out, Milo said softly. After that, he looked at a tall and skinny youngster standing beside him. He had a pair of faint dark eye circles, and looked rather exhausted. However, he did appear to be rather friendly. Smiling, Milo asked the youngster, "Bro, could I ask you something?" Randy yawned. When he heard what Milo said, he turned and looked at him. He quickly sized Milo up, and thought, such a tall person is not common at all. However, Randy had always loved making friends. He nodded with a smile, and said, "Please ask." "From your accent, you don't sound local at all." "We are traders from Rodu, and saw that so many people were lining up here, so we joined the crowd." Milo nodded. Seeing that Randy was rather friendly, he relaxed a little, and continued, "I would just like to ask if this restaurant really has delicious food. We are in a rush, and would not like to waste too much time. If you're talking about delicious food, you're at the right place." Randy smiled. He said excitedly, "This Mamie restaurant is the best restaurant in Chaos City. It's not even too much to call it the best restaurant on the Norland continent. Here, you can try delicacies you would not be able to get anywhere else, because every dish on their menu was invented by Boss Mag. You might have to line up for a long time, but it's very worth it." Milo was stunned by what Randy said. He didn't expect that a random stranger that he found randomly would just start throwing compliments about Mamie restaurant. This made him question his original judgment. He hesitated, and questioned, "Is it really that good?" Judging from Randy's clothing, he should be a youngster who needed not worry about work. Besides, he seemed rather passionate. That made him more believable, as one could tell that he really liked the restaurant. "Let me put it this way for you. I've been to many places on the Norland continent, and have tried countless restaurants, big and small. However, none of them could keep bringing something novel out like Mamie restaurant. It even made me willing to stay here just for the launch of the next dish. You might find it difficult to understand how difficult it is to find something really delicious. However, if you stick with Mamie restaurant, once Boss Mag releases a new product, that would be the top-class delicacy you've been searching long and hard for," Randy said seriously. Chapter 1909 This owner is too good. If those businesses could be a little better, and stop serving mediocre food to their customers, he would not even bother writing anything. If there was any delicacy worth his recommendation, he would likewise not be stingy with his words. However, as of now, the rate at which such delicacies appeared was very low. He had been to many places, but the more he traveled, the more disappointed he was. He'd rather return to Rodu to diss on those restaurants. Milo could not help but have some expectations for Mamie restaurant after hearing Randy's praises. Of course, he still had reservations despite the expectation. Randy might have come to that conclusion because he had not tried any delicacy before. This was not impossible. "I heard that Boss Mag had just launched a new product today. I didn't manage to get out of bed for lunch, so I'm going to try this mapo tofu for dinner," Randy said with an expectant smile. "That's great." Milo nodded with a smile. He could tell that Randy was attached to this restaurant. Based on his observations of the customers, Milo could ascertain that this restaurant did not hire actors. For a restaurant to have so many customers line up willingly to await its opening, it had to have some capabilities. However, Milo was still suspicious of the standard of this restaurant. He had to try it and find it good for it to be really good. He thought that an average restaurant in Rodo could open a branch in Chaos City and be as popular as this restaurant. This was what was known as dimensionality reduction. The owner of this restaurant might be from somewhere else, maybe even Rodo, and had used its better than Chaos City standards to win over a group of customers. The wait lasted half an hour. Milo and Randy chatted casually, and they found much in common. The restaurant door finally opened. A young man in a clean chef's suit walked out to greet the customers with a smile. "Look, that is Boss Mag. He is the owner and main chef of this restaurant," Randy introduced. At such a young age. Milo looked at Mag in shock. He looked like he was only around 30. He looked a little too scrawny for a chef. Who knew if he would be able to lift up bigger pots? Being a chef was a lot of manual labor. Besides, his chef's suit was so clean and white. Although Milo also had some expectations towards a chef's dressing and demeanor, for a chef to work in a kitchen dressed like that was too much of an act. If even a drop of oil splattered on the suit while stir-frying, wouldn't the entire suit be ruined? Or did he change into a new set every day? To Milo, cooking in the kitchen dressed like that was akin to restraining oneself, and increasing the difficulty of cooking. Yes. He's the epitome of young and capable. Randy nodded. After that, he lamented enviously, the number of ladies who want to marry Boss Mag could already make up the circumference of Aiden Square. That really makes one envious, Milo chimed in sourly. The customers started entering. Milo also moved forward with the line. He watched how Mag greeted the customers familiarly and courteously, and could even call out the customers' nicknames. Not a bad atmosphere. Milo nodded. This small detail was enough to make one feel the humanity in this restaurant. "Boss Mag," Randy greeted with a smile. Mag looked at Randy's dark eye circles, and said, "It might be good to be young, but you still have to give your kidneys a break." "I can't take a break, so I'm here looking for you to get it all pumped up again," Randy said with a smile and wink. Mag laughed as well. He knew that Randy had been a gigolo recently. A 30-year-old young lady was at the wild age. Randy could not make the call to rest. Since he had decided on this path, he should know that. However, it was written all over his face he loved it. "Have a bit more Rigiamo later," Mag said. "Hee, of course." Randy quickly walked in so that he would not block the customers behind. Milo nodded slightly to Garland and Milo in a greeting. They did not look familiar to him. They had to be first-timers. Interacting with customers comfortably. While he's able to joke, he's also able to maintain seriousness. Milo had a good first impression of Mag. The moment he entered the restaurant, Milo's eyes lit up. The scale of the restaurant could only be considered average. There were only a few dozen tables in the main hall, with simple partitions between the tables that did not affect the flow of traffic. At the same time, customers could have some private space. The designated hot pot area was on the right, and was majorly separated from the normal dining area, with only 2 arched doorways for entrance and exit. It was said that it was because having hot pot and normal dining had 2 different atmospheres. The accessories and decorations on the dining tables stunned Milo at first glance. It was not because they were grand or big. It was because they gave one a sense of security and comfort. There was a comfortable distance between tables, and there were refreshing wooden decorations with some greens to make one feel at ease. Milo was stunned at this restaurant that had one feeling relaxed and wanting to sit down and order some food immediately after stepping in. This was probably the atmosphere every restaurant would like to create. However, of all the restaurants he had been to, none of them could do it as well as Mamie Restaurant. What stunned Milo the most was the ladies standing at both sides. There was a half-dragon, an elf, an orc, a demon. Although they were all of different races, the thing they had in common was their stunning looks. "This owner is too good," Milo exclaimed to himself. He looked away courteously, and reminded himself again that he was here for the food today. "Let's take a sit here." Garland chose a seat closest to the kitchen. There, they could better observe this restaurant, including how the service staff would serve the food and how things were doing in the kitchen. "This kitchen is open for all to view." The moment Milo sat down, he realized that the kitchen was actually separated by a large crystal wall. Sitting at this spot could enable him to see everything that was happening in the kitchen with one glance. "That's really," Garland turned over upon hearing that, and was also in disbelief. "That's Boss Mag being confident and proud. He's not even afraid people would learn his recipes with this open concept." Randy came to their table with a smile, and said, "Mamie Restaurant has a table sharing rule. Do you mind?" Chapter 19:10 This can be cured too. On top of that, he had a great time conversing with this youngster who had given him the answers to a lot of his questions just now. He had the thought of making friends with him, and thus nodded with a smile, and said, "Sure, please, take a seat." "Thank you." Randy sat with a smile. He looked at the two men with a smile, and said, "I'm Randy. How should I address both of you? What kind of business are you engaged in Chaos City?" "Randy." Milo and Garland were stunned at the same time. They exchanged glances, and had strange expressions. Their motive for today was an expose. Other than to expose this restaurant, it was also to expose Randy and Derek. But they did not expect to actually meet the real deal here, and they were even sharing a table. That was inevitably awkward. Randy looked at the two men keeping mum, chuckled, and said, "Too complicated? Forget it then. Don't mind me. It's fate that we could meet. I just wanted a name so that we can greet each other when we meet again. No. I'm Milo, and this is my brother, Garland. We are traders selling skins," Milo said with a hearty chuckle as he winked at Garland. "Yes, yes, yes. We brothers sell skins." Garland nodded in agreement after getting the hint. Milo's reputation was a little bad. If he was recognized there and then, they might be booted out. This had happened sometimes in Rodu. "I see, you guys are skin traders. When I toured around the continent, I would often hitch a ride with traders. Skin traders are the friendliest." Randy smiled. After that, he looked at the two men with bewilderment, and asked, "But shouldn't skin traders be harvesting at the Orc tribes now in this season? Why have you come to Chaos City?" Milo was stunned. He just blurted out the skin trader persona, but did not expect Randy to know so much about them. "We've already done our harvesting for the year, and have come specially to Chaos City to sell it to an old buyer." Garland quickly took over. Randy exclaimed, "I see. Then you've got to try the food in Mamie Restaurant for the days you're staying in Chaos City. You won't be able to try them back in Rodu." "Hee hee." Milo and Garland exchanged glances and let out a sigh of relief. After that, an orc came over to their table and sat down. Sharing a table had become a norm in Mamie Restaurant. Mamie Restaurant and Garland were only shocked that the elves, demons, goblins, and orcs were sitting together at neighboring tables with a shockingly harmonious atmosphere. They would sometimes share a casual conversation before ordering their food. Such a sight was impossible to find anywhere else. One would not be able to find different races sharing tables in other restaurants in Chaos City, much less Rodu. This restaurant was a little special indeed. "This is the menu. Since it's your first time here, you should take a look at the menu first." Randy pushed the menu to the two of them, and reminded them, "Oh, right, you can also take a look at the back of the menu. There are some dining rules. Take a look at them so that you don't break any of the rules." "All right." Milo nodded. He flipped to the back of the menu, and read the dining rules written neatly at the back. Usually, when a customer chose a restaurant, he would have certain requirements for the restaurant. However, this restaurant had to be weird, and actually made rules for its customers. However, after reading all the rules, Milo had a totally different feeling about it. The rules were very detailed, and were set for all customers. However, these rules would not infringe on the customers' benefits. Instead, they would actually forge a quiet and peaceful dining atmosphere. Like right now, during dinner time, one would be able to hear occasional shouts from drunk men trying to attract attention in the restaurants in Rodu, even in the private rooms. However, over here, even the demons who looked menacing spoke softly. Milo grew fonder of this restaurant. Just the atmosphere and environment of this restaurant had surpassed all the other restaurants he had been to. Next, Milo flipped open the menu. His eyes lit up as he glanced over the beautiful pictures. He had no idea what technology was used to make these pictures to make them look so colorful and vibrant, as though they were real food. These pictures must be for display only, right? They look different from the real thing, right? Milo asked Randy. They do look different from the real thing. Randy nodded. Indeed. Milo was deep in thought. This was just one of the usual gimmicks used by businesses. The real thing looks even better. The flat pictures don't do the food justice, Randy said with a smile. Milo glanced at Randy. He started to suspect if this fellow had already become this restaurant's full-time actor. Randy inched closer, and glanced at the pictures as he muttered, "This mapo tofu looks like it will go pretty well with rice. Looks like I have to order a bowl of rice. Then I'll have 2 rugiamos and a red braised pork. That should be about it." Milo started to reassess the menu. Other than the pictures, the prices were also very stunning. The cheapest thing on the menu was the octopus balls, which cost 40 copper coins per serving. The other dishes were almost all 3 digits and more. The spicy grilled fish had already passed 1,000, and the Buddha jumps over the wall actually cost 10,000 copper coins. Of course, there were more expensive restaurants in Rodu and more expensive dishes than the Buddha jumps over the wall. This time, they were already prepared for these prices before coming. "How should I order?" Milo asked Garland. Initially, they wanted to order everything on the menu. However, after seeing the menu, they realized they only had a budget for half of the dishes on the menu. On top of that, it was one of the restaurant's rules for customers to order only the amount they could eat. Food wastage was not allowed. Therefore, they now had to order according to how much they could eat. Of course you need a combination of meat and vegetables. That's the healthy diet, Garland said with a smile as he glanced at Milo. Milo got the hint. He looked at Garland with admiration. "The older you are, the wiser you are. Bro Garland. You should order the Buddha jumps over the wall. It cures baldness. You'll see results after eating it just once. After having it 3 times, you'll be able to regain a luscious head of hair," Randy told Garland sincerely. "Cures baldness." Garland's eyes lit up. He had been so troubled by his hair loss problems that he went bald. The more troubled he was, the balder he got. Now, his hair was almost gone. He had now transformed from a suave middle-aged man into a bald old man. Why, of course. Mamie Restaurant almost became a hospital specializing in treating baldness. Countless bald customers come every day. Randy pointed at the table diagonally behind them discreetly, and said softly, "Look at that table there. It's a gathering of old bald friends. Most of them came together to solve their hair loss problems." Garland turned to take a look. From his position, he could see 4 bright heads. However, based on his experience, it seemed like they were already in the late stage of baldness. Usually, that was when the individual would start giving up on himself, and would go around telling lies to deceive oneself like it was more cooling, it was a breeze washing his head, and more. "This can be cured too?" Garland asked in disbelief. "All they need is 3 treatments, and they will be guaranteed a head full of luscious black hair. If it doesn't work, go look for Boss Mag, Randy said with a serious nod. Then I'll have one too, Garland said without thinking. Ahem, bro, the money we have isn't really enough. Milo let out a dry cough. He felt as though Garland had already started falling into Randy's sales trap. Garland also woke up from his fantasy. Their budget was not enough for him to have the Buddha jumps over the wall. 10,000 copper coins to buy a head full of luscious hair. Going back to 20 is no longer a dream, Randy said casually. It's all right. I still have some with me. I'll order the Buddha jumps over the wall. Garland still could not resist the temptations as he pulled out his purse. 10,000 copper coins. That was almost half of Garland's monthly salary. Even during gatherings in Rodu, they would rarely spend more than 10,000 copper coins. However, he was about to order a 10,000 copper coin Buddha jumps over the wall. All these years, you have been troubled by your receding hairline. You've tried many things, and the hair loss problem is not an illness. It's a disability. You can't cure it. Milo decided to give it his last shot. That's a rather interesting perspective you have. Randy smiled. However, even if it is a disability, Boss Mag can cure it for you with a bowl of soup. Milo glanced at Randy, and thought to himself that he had met his match. Yes. If my hair can grow back, and I can let my wife see the man I was 20 years ago, it will be very interesting. Garland slammed the table with assertion. Milo did not speak further. After all, Garland was the chief editor of Perfect Food. He had his assets, so what would that little amount of money mean in comparison to his hair? If there was no effect, they would have one more material to write on. Randy would not be able to run away from his false advertising. Shocking! Food critic from Mediterranean actually pitched an anti-hair loss product for a restaurant. Such a title would definitely have a spot as the hottest article in next month's Perfect Food. To be honest, Milo was a little disappointed ever since he started lining up. He had been loading himself up with ammunition, but the moment he arrived at Mamie restaurant, he realized that he actually had nothing to critique. As an expert in nitpicking, he had a pair of sharp eyes made for finding imperfections in a mouth that could form the most hurtful sentences with the simplest words. However, he actually found a restaurant that he could not say anything bad or bitter about. Even his tone became gentler due to the environment and the rules. These are just fleeting things. We'll find out whether the food is the real deal when they are served. Milo ordered his food, and sat with his arms crossed, waiting quietly for the food to be served. He ordered simple dishes. There were meat and vegetables, and they were dishes that Randy and Derek had written about in Mediterranean and Vegetarianism. Since Milo was here to nitpick, as a professional, he could not be haphazard about it. That was not his style. He would attack with accuracy. That was his unique point. While he was waiting for the dishes to be served, Milo turned quietly to look at the kitchen. However, he was stunned. From his position, he could see the interior of the kitchen clearly through the glass window. It was a different kind of clean and bright from the kitchens he had seen before. The large space was around half the size of the dining hall, and he could see a part of the kitchen counter. At this moment, Mag was just like a general in the army. The pots on the stove were his men, and the spatula in his hand was like his weapon. He maneuvered between several pots on the stove, cooking different food at the same time, and even had the time to flip hundreds of kebab sticks on the grill while brushing oil and sauces on them. It was really over the top. In other restaurants, there would be several main chefs in the kitchen with their own apprentices and helpers. It made the entire kitchen hot and stuffy, and they were not very efficient, either. However, Mag could cover all cooking-related jobs, including the plating and decoration. Yet, he gave off the sense that he was moving very swiftly and smoothly. It even seemed as though he could work fine with 2 more pots. As for efficiency, Milo, who was sitting by the kitchen door, could already see the dishes float past him one by one before landing in front of the customers who ordered them. "It seems like Miss Babla has returned. It's your first time seeing a spatial magic caster serve dishes, right?" Randy asked with a smile. "It is my first time." Milo nodded. He made a rough evaluation inside. This serving speed was incredible. For a mid-scale restaurant, such a serving speed would require a highly efficient kitchen to keep up with the operations. Meanwhile, in this kitchen, there was only one person, cooking leisurely. "This owner is a freak, right?" Milo swallowed his saliva. He had already defeated all the other chefs in the world simply with how he operated so leisurely. Boss Mag is actually chilling already. 2 days ago, he set up a stall at the delicacy extravaganza. There were thousands in the line, and he was the only one cooking. While cooking, I thought I only saw flashes of his hands. He was 10 times faster than the stall next to him with only less than 20 customers, Randy said with a smile as he turned to look into the kitchen. "Isn't that a little too casual? You can't put your heart and soul into the food you're making this way," Garland dissed. Randy chuckled. "I think that this has more heart and soul compared to those chefs doing their repetitive actions dryly." His ease and relaxation show that he has confidence in his culinary skills. On top of that, you can tell from Boss Mag's concentration that he is enjoying and is also passionate about what he is doing. Garland cocked his brow. A writer indeed. He was actually stumped for words, and could only turn to look towards Milo for help. "Yet, I haven't seen such an attitude towards cooking in a very long time." However, Milo nodded in agreement, and was looking at Mag with admiration. "Garland. They were here to nitpick and expose the lies of meatitarian and vegetarianism." However, it seemed that Milo was not in the right mind. Although his style was giving a hard blow online and acting meek offline, he usually would not give praise. "Here is your food. Please enjoy." The dishes started floating out from the kitchen, and landed gently in front of them while a sweet voice sounded in their ears. Although they had already seen how the spatial magic caster served the dishes, Milo and Garland were still shocked. The thought of the rare and mysterious spatial magic caster serving them made them feel a strange sort of exhilaration. However, Milo was quickly attracted to the dishes in front of him. On the long plate before him was a fish that was split open in the middle. A bright red sauce was drizzled on top of the fish. The sauce seeped perfectly into the meat through the crosscuts. The enticing fragrance of the fish wafted out together with the rising steam. That made Milo swallow his saliva. That smell was really too enticing. Garland had almost the same expression. However, he said softly, "I don't think we ordered fish. This is not fish. This is eggplant with garlic sauce," Randy said with a smile after taking a glance. "This is eggplant with garlic sauce." Milo and Garland were stunned. They took a closer look, and found out that it was indeed not fish on the plate. Instead, it was an eggplant that was cut into a fish's shape and fried till golden brown. If one did not look carefully, they would definitely think it was a fish. That knife skills and craft could turn an ordinary eggplant into something completely different. Chapter 19:12 I think that we've already failed. However, the eggplant with garlic sauce presented right in front of him actually used its outer appearance and smell to completely deceive his eyes, giving him a tight slap in the face. On top of that, a string of words appeared in his mind, and they were the exact words Derek used in his description. He had to say that Derek's descriptions were very simple. He merely recorded the appearance and smell of the eggplant with garlic sauce as it was, but that precisely brought about the strong image that allowed the readers to see the dish right in front of their eyes. Milo and Garland exchanged glances. They saw a hint of awkwardness in each other's eyes. The appearance was just as described. As for the taste, they would have to try it to know whether it was as magical as it was described. "Come, let's give it a taste." Milo picked up his chopsticks, and pinched a piece of eggplant before putting it into his mouth. The soft eggplant melted in his mouth almost immediately. The sourness, spiciness, sweetness, and savoriness exploded almost at the same time, bringing his taste buds to life. Ah, what a beautiful feeling! Every flavor was so outstanding, yet they blended so well with each other. It was just like a gentle trap leading one in step by step. There was no fish at all in the eggplant with garlic sauce, and it was not even made with fish soup, but it had a taste that even surpassed fish. How incredible! This was actually a vegetarian dish. After the wild feast experienced by his taste buds, Milo swallowed the eggplant. There were still remnants of its fragrance lingering in his mouth, making him want to go for more. I can't believe that someone could actually make eggplant taste so good. This culinary skill and creativity are to behold, Milo exclaimed as he looked at the eggplant with garlic sauce in shock. Trying this eggplant with garlic sauce after reading Derek's article did not disappoint Milo at all. Instead, it made him even more surprised. The words were insufficient to describe the beauty of this dish. Maybe it could be said that everyone who tried this dish would have their own unique experience. This eggplant with garlic sauce had brought Milo an exceptional surprise. However, the thought of their motive here made Milo appear rather awkward. They came with the intention of exposing the lies behind Mamie Restaurant, Randy, and Derek. However, right now, he had fallen in love as well. Garland was even more shocked than Milo. When he was in Rodu, Milo and Garland would always go out for meals. They knew each other for more than a decade, but Garland had never heard Milo praise any dishes, much less seen him be shocked by them. Garland picked up a piece of eggplant with a complicated feeling, and put it into his mouth. After that, his eyes lit up, and the change of his expression was just as animated as Milo's. After swallowing the eggplant, Garland ate a mouthful of rice before nodding, and exclaiming, "This eggplant is really delicious. It's not just delicious. It even goes very well with rice." Milo nodded as he ate a mouthful of eggplant and a mouthful of rice with relish. Don't stuff yourselves with the eggplant with garlic sauce. The red braised pork is great too. Randy could not help reminding them as a meatitarian. Upon hearing that, Milo and Garland shifted their gaze onto the red braised pork that was the hottest topic of the previous week's meatitarian. The pork belly that had evenly distributed fat and lean meat was cut into long square pieces. The fatty meat and lean meat were glistening with a red glow, but it did not seem greasy at all. Instead, it was very enticing. Milo had a special fondness for meat too. However, he did not really like pork because of its rank odor and greasiness that was a result of poor handling by chefs. On top of that, it was very difficult to separate the lean and fatty meat in pork belly, and therefore it was the worst part of pork. However, pork belly had to be the chosen ingredient for red braised pork. On top of that, it was not specially treated, and was only cut into long strips. Even the pork skin was not removed. Therefore, initially, Milo scoffed at Randy's article on the red braised pork. It was as though the entire world had not eaten pork before. However, just as it was, the pork which he would usually find greasy suddenly looked very enticing at this moment. Let me give it a try. Milo picked up a piece of red braised pork. From the texture he felt from the chopsticks, the pork belly was very tender, and when he brought the meat closer, he could see that the pork skin looked very chewy and translucent. The rich fragrance of the meat wafted into his nose. The meat's fragrance was unique and rich. There were many spices added to the dish, but they all blended harmoniously together. Milo actually could not smell any rank odor at all. There was only the rich fragrance of the meat. What spices did this chef use? Milo thought to himself. After that, he put the meat into his mouth and took a bite. The tender pork melted almost immediately in his mouth. The lean meat was chewy and not dry. The pork skin was soft and sticky. He bit softly into the meat, and the sweet and fragrant sauce seeped out from the meat. At this moment, the beauty of the pork was brought out to the fullest. It was fatty but not greasy, fragrant and tender. Milo raised his brows. The satisfaction that exploded in his mouth was incredible, and it was written all over his face. There was no rank odor. There was no greasiness. There was only the deliciousness that made one fall deeper into it. Is this really pork? Why does it taste different from the pork I've had before? This taste is crazy. Milo swallowed the red braised pork. He could still taste the lingering fragrance in his mouth as he started to question his life. If the eggplant with garlic sauce gave him a surprise, this red braised pork gave him a completely different perception. It gave him a change in perception of what he knew and what he experienced. Milo knew that he had already lost after eating only a piece of red braised pork. They had lost thoroughly. There was no problem with Randy's article. If he had to say something about it, it would be that the tone of the article was too calm and restrained. His article could not fully present the deliciousness of the red braised pork. It was not too much to call a chef that could turn a piece of pork belly into such delicious food a genius. Milo turned to look at Mag, who was operating in the kitchen suavely, with admiration. Such a chef was probably a chef with real craftsmanship. He opened the kitchen up so that everyone could see how the food that was served to them was made. Amidst the fire, oil, and smoke, his uniform was not stained at all. He used the most elegant way to make the most delicious food. I think that we've already failed, Milo told Garland with a complex expression. However, after they arrived at Mamie restaurant, everything was completely different from what they had expected. The eggplant with garlic sauce that surpassed fish without fish really existed, and the red braised pork made with greasy pork belly was indeed so delicious it made one fall deeply in love with it. As an experienced chief editor of a gourmet magazine, Garland was not any worse than Milo when it came to identifying delicacies. He even had a wider exposure to delicacies. Mamie restaurant was indeed the most unique restaurant he had met in his entire career, or to be exact, his entire life. If one was not trying to find trouble on purpose, no one would be able to find anything to nitpick. Was the red braised pork not fragrant enough? Or was the eggplant with garlic sauce not good enough to go with rice? A comfortable dining environment, harmonious atmosphere, beautiful service staff, gentle service, and spatial magic caster to serve your dishes. They were things that a normal restaurant might not be able to do even one of, yet Mamie restaurant did them all. Why would one find trouble with such a restaurant, unless it was going against one's conscience? Milo was right. In terms of their motivations when they set off, they had failed. Utterly failed. It's impossible to fail. It's the biggest success to have tried such delicious food. Garland quickly smiled and winked at Milo. Milo was slightly stunned. After that, he quickly understood. Since they had come all the way here, and had failed to expose the lies, why not look at it in a different way, and think of it as seeking out a new restaurant? For a person who lived on words, such flexibility was basic. A change in thoughts made Milo's attitude change completely. At first, he came in thinking of ways to nitpick and find fault. Now, he just had to enjoy the delicacies and dig out points that Derek and Randy had failed to write about and recreate the articles. Of course, his goal was not to copy others, but to write a review. He already had the rough idea in his head. Although the gimmick might not be a greater hit than an expose, he could still ride on the wave led by meatitarian and vegetarianism and add his personal uniqueness to come up with quite a good article. Hi, your Buddha jumps over the wall. Not long later, Yabimiya walked over with a small pot, and placed it gently in front of Garland. There was a cover over the pot, which gave it a level of mysteriousness. Thank you, Garland thanked, and put his chopsticks down. He wiped his mouth, and looked at the little pot in front of him sincerely. Balding was a very serious topic, and right now, in front of him was probably the perfect solution to his problem. He had to be respectful. Milo also put down his chopsticks. He looked at the simple and thick little pot expectantly as well. This dish was not written about by Derek or Randy. After taking in a deep breath, Garland opened up the cover on the small pot. Steam rose, and a rich meaty fragrance wafted out. Milo took a good sniff. The most striking smell was the smell of seafood. The meaty fragrance was equally rich. The smell of wild fungus toned down the smell of the former two, and there was even a faint scent of alcohol. The layers of smell were very obvious. It was a combination of various ingredients and smells, making it difficult for one to really figure out what this dish was, and at the same time made one very curious about what it was. Gulp. Milo could not help but swallow his saliva. It was very difficult to imagine that this fragrance actually came from a pot of soup. Disregarding whether it actually had the effect of curing baldness, the smell alone also made Milo want to give it a try. He wanted to find out for himself what exactly this soup tasted like, how many ingredients were hidden inside, and how this combination of tastes blended together. When the steam had dispersed, the soup in the pot was revealed. In the rich soup, there were various ingredients including abalone, chicken, shark's fins. They were very obviously soft and tender, but still maintained their original shape. They did not disintegrate over the long hours of stewing. The soup was rich but not murky, and looked really enticing. Just smelling it made me feel as though my hair was going to rush out of my scalp. Garland swallowed his saliva. He had already picked up his spoon impatiently to scoop up a spoonful of the brownish soup. He put the spoon to his mouth, and blew on it before drinking the soup. The fresh soup submerged his taste buds slowly. The freshness of seafood and richness of meat. The tastes of various ingredients slowly unveiled, blooming into astounding goodness at the tip of his tongue. The meaty fragrance was rich and not greasy, making one go for one mouthful after another. The soup trickled down Garland's throat slowly and into his stomach, turning into a surge of warmth that rose up, gathering at the top of his head, and making his scalp tingle a little. Beads of perspiration formed on Garland's head. "There's really something," Garland said, shocked and surprised. Although hair did not grow out immediately, he felt as though something was about to sprout out from the top of his head, and that was a very real feeling. "What's the taste like?" Milo had already swallowed his saliva several times secretly. "It's the taste of money." Garland nodded seriously. After that, he scooped up another spoonful of soup, and put it into his mouth. He closed his eyes to enjoy the delicious soup flowing through his teeth. This pot of soup had changed his perception of soups. He thought that a soup could only be a kale fare on the dining table. It was used either as an appetizer before a meal or as a filler after a meal. However, this Buddha jumps over the wall had such an imposing aura that all the other dishes paled in comparison. He could identify several ingredients in the pot. The extremely fresh seafood justified the price of the dish. On top of that, there were various rare delicacies too. 10,000 copper coins for a serving of Buddha jumps over the wall for these ingredients alone would have way surpassed all the other restaurants in Rodu that marked up their prices with gimmicks. Not to mention that the goodness of the Buddha jumps over the wall was something the dishes served in those restaurants could not compare to. "Can I give it a try?" Milo could not hold himself back. He picked up his chopsticks, and stared hungrily at the ingredients. "This is medicine. You can't just try it." Garland picked the small pot up, and shifted it closer to himself. "I'll just give it a try. Just one mouthful." Milo's gaze shifted with the Buddha jumps over the wall. "Not even a mouthful. Whether or not my hair can grow out depends on this small pot of Buddha jumps over the wall. Look, I already feel something on my head." Garland used his left hand to protect the little pot without budging. "Miser." Milo looked at Garland, who was sweating buckets, and did not know if he really felt something on his head. He could only grudgingly pick up a piece of red braised pork, and put it into his mouth. The red braised pork is really delicious." After drinking a few big mouthfuls of soup, Garland picked up a translucent shark fin. The tender shark fin almost slid right into his mouth, and after being submerged in the soup, it had a very wonderful and magical taste. It seemed like he was biting on nothing, and its mysteriousness made it such a joy to eat. exhilarating. Garland thought that this was the best meal he had in 2 years. This pot of Buddha jumps over the wall was also the best soup he had ever had in his entire lifetime. Your hair really grew out. Milo glanced at Garland's head as he exclaimed with his eyes wide open. Really? Garland was stunned. He reached out to feel his head, and felt a furry sensation on his initially bald and smooth head. Milo inched closer for a look, nodded, and said, "Some thin hair has sprouted out, and there's quite a lot of it. I think it's working." Milo had known Garland for decades. He watched how his hairline receded and expanded outward. In the end, because he looked like Kappa, Garland had no choice but to shave his head. That was an irreversible process. His hair only fell out, and never grew back. However, right now, new hair actually grew out on his bald head. On top of that, the hair was growing on his crown. "Stop touching it. If you touch it too much, and it starts falling out, you'll be losing out." Milo hit Garland's hand away to stop him from his habitual head-stroking motion. He took a shiny silver spoon, and gave it to Garland. "Take a look for yourself." Garland took the spoon, and positioned it at various angles before finally seeing his bald head and the sprouting hair through the spoon. "That's hair as fine as baby's hair. Great, fantastic. My bald head is finally coming back to life." Garland cried tears of joy. 2 streams of tears trickled down his cheeks uncontrollably, making him look like a 60-year-old baby. Upon hearing that, Mag, who was in the kitchen, looked out and smiled. The happiness of a food critic was just so simple. "I told you I wasn't lying," Randy said with a smile. He had already finished his mapo tofu, 2 bowls of rice, and 2 rigiamos. Even the red braised pork was wiped out. Garland was overjoyed. He patted Randy on his shoulder, and said, "Bro Randy, you're really my benefactor. If Carl doesn't treat you well in the future, come and look for me. I'll take care of you." Randy looked at Garland with bewilderment. Carl was the chief editor of Meatitarian, and was also a scary fellow who would rush Randy for his articles, and had even sent Randy a 2-meter-long blade. However, Randy had only just met the two of them, and he did not even mention that he was a food critic. Moreover, how did Garland know Carl? Why did Garland even ask him to look for him? Milo kicked Garland under the table, and used his eyes to hint him to watch his words. Garland also quickly noticed that he was so happy that he forgot about their identity. He quickly covered things up by smilingly saying, "Aren't you a food critic with Meatitarian? My house is actually beside Meatitarian's office building. I would usually see that fatty Carl when I have breakfast. That fellow is so stingy. He's no good thing. He loves to rush people for their drafts, so I was worried that you would be pressured by it. If you can't take it anymore, join me as a skin trader." "I see, so you know Carl too." Randy understood what was going on. After that, with a smile and a shake of his head, he said, "Thanks, bro, for the kind intention, but I am no longer a full-time food critic. It's just a hobby right now." "Hey!" Milo and Garland looked at Randy in shock. Milo could not help but ask, "Aren't you rising in popularity right now? You're the hottest writer in Meatitarian, why did you stop writing? Writing is so tiring. It's not stable, and I would be rushed for articles every day, or I would receive blades in my mail. After my racking my brains and coming out with something, they still say that it's too short. Whom are they looking down on? Who is short? Tell me, who is short? Even though it is a little short, I can last long. I have been consistently going at it for so many years," Randy said with a sigh. Upon hearing that, Milo sighed as well. He could totally understand. Although he might always attack those businesses without mercy, whenever he saw the letterbox stuffed, all he could do was to recycle the letters. Thankfully, he was rather positive, and managed to pull through the most difficult period by selling blades. Sometimes, he would have fond memories when he saw blades. Therefore, now I am collecting rent. There's a woman who keeps pestering me, and she even stuffed a huge key in my hands. She told me to help her collect rent. She would even get angry if I don't collect rent for her. Randy pulled his shirt up to reveal a huge key hanging on his pants. After that, he sighed, and said, "Now, I finally know that the life of rich people is really simple and boring." Milo. Garland. After eating, I'll have to go collect rent, and at night I'll have to go back to hand over the public funds. Goodbye, brothers. Randy stood up, settled the bill, and left the two of them behind. A proud gigolo. This person is a talent. Garland smacked his lips together. We can just continue being salty. Milo watched as Randy left. He didn't want to work hard, either. Let's go too. Today is a day with a great harvest. We didn't come in vain. Garland stood up and settled the bill. We're going back just like that? Milo asked Garland after they stepped out of the restaurant. Of course not. I still have 2 days of treatment with the Buddha jumps over the wall. Garland shook his head. He smiled, and said, "This time, we have 3 days here. It's such a waste to go back after only 1 day. Of course we have to deepen our understanding of this restaurant. Is our budget still enough?" Milo glanced at Garland. "You just need to squeeze something out for a budget." Garland did not seem to care. "Besides, as long as we can write a super hot article, boss would definitely expense our meals. Just eat as much as you want." "In that case, I agree to work for a few more days. It will be best if we can work from day to night to understand this restaurant completely." Milo nodded. "Are we going back to the hotel now?" "No, let's go walk around. I want to have a chat with the owner of the restaurant after Mamie Restaurant ends its operating hours." Garland shook his head. "Chat about?" Garland smiled, and said, "Since we can't find anything to nitpick on this time, it would be best if we can get the backstory of the delicacy. That way, we could set ourselves apart from meatitarian and vegetarianism. Otherwise, we would be no different from those small magazines with no goals. All they do is copy and reap small profits." Milo thought for a while and nodded. Garland had full control of the content of the articles. "I think the hot pot looks quite good. Why don't we give it a try tomorrow?" Milo's eyes were quickly attracted to the designated hot pot area next to them. Those demons who ate while blowing fire looked rather funny and interesting. It seemed like a must to try. Chapter 19:15 Are you trying to make us sleep by cheating? The two of them were just ordinary folks, so Mag wasn't in a hurry to close the door. "Hello, boss. Can I have a small chat with you?" Garland came forward and smiled at Mag. "I am the chief editor of the gourmet magazine Perfect Food. I am blown away by the dishes you cooked today, and would like to have an exchange with you." Perfect Food. Mag frowned a little. He had some impression of this magazine. He had flipped through the top few magazines on the Norland continent before, and Perfect Food was among them. It wasn't the magazine itself that gave Mag a lasting impression. Instead, it was one of its food critics called Milo, who used satire to diss all the merchants, that left an impression. He seemed very special in the midst of all the gourmet articles. Of course, he mainly reminded Mag of his past self. It was quite a shameful past. However, compared to Mag, Milo was slightly less sarcastic. Milo was more restrained with his vocabulary. He hadn't reached the level where he could write as he pleased. Anyway, he didn't diss as harshly as Mag had. Furthermore, Mag was thinking that he should remind him to hold it back a little if he ever got a chance to meet him. After all, these chefs were very vindictive. He might get cursed and end up as a chef in the alternate world. After all, not everyone was going to be as lucky as him, who ended up with a cute daughter and a beautiful wife after transmigrating to the alternate world. He might be the only person who was that lucky. Wait a section. Milo. Mag looked at the tall middle-aged man with a square face standing at the side. The omniscient door prompted his information when he walked in earlier, and his name was Milo. Could he be that chap? Nice to meet you. I am Milo, a food critic. Milo could only force himself to greet Mag when he saw Mag looking at him. He observed Mag's expressions changes closely. He never had a good reputation among the restaurateurs. That wasn't a secret. Hello, I am Mag. It's a pleasure to meet you. Mag nodded with a smile. He actually felt a familiarity of being in the same occupation from Milo. He felt very consoled that someone was finally earning money with a keyboard. What an inclusive world this was. Thank you. Milo was flattered. He mused to himself inwardly that there was actually a restaurant owner who liked him. What a surprise. May I know what's the matter? Mag asked the two of them. The two little ones were still waiting for him to tell them bedtime stories, so he didn't intend to welcome them in. Garland knew Mag had a hard day, so he cut straight to the point. Perhaps you have no idea about this. Under the promotion of many gourmet magazines, Mamie Restaurant and the dishes you created were adored by the readers all over the world. Milo and I were impressed by your cooking after tasting your food. We hope we can listen to the stories behind your delicacies whenever you are free. We think this is what the readers would like to know too. Am I already that influential? Mag looked at Garland with surprise. He knew some of the restaurant's regulars were food critics. Randy, who had just got attached to a wealthy lady, was one of them. However, Mag didn't expect the articles that they wrote to expand Mamie Restaurant's influence all over the Norland continent. Yes. No one can resist the charm of good food. Your Mamie Restaurant is already deemed a holy land by many people. Milo nodded. Although he had always given a snort of contempt to this so-called holy land, he wholeheartedly agreed that Mamie Restaurant should be promoted as a holy land this time. Mag's brain spun quickly as he looked at the two of them. Influence meant popularity, and popularity to him were people whom he could turn into fans. Since that's the case, let's have a chat after tomorrow's breakfast service. It's a little late now, and the children need to go to bed, Mag replied with a smile. All right. We will not disturb your rest then. See you tomorrow, Garland quickly said with a smile as he watched the restaurant's door close slowly. Then, he gave Milo a high five. Order whatever you like tomorrow. The funds are definitely sufficient. We're right to come here. Garland couldn't conceal his excitement. Hee hee. I will eat to my heart's content tomorrow. Milo chuckled. He was always good at eating at others' expense. Amy carried Ugly Duckling, which was already asleep, as she sat on barstool, swinging her legs, and asked, Father, where's Mother? Isn't she coming back to sleep tonight? Annie was also looking at Mag at the side. She has something she needs to do tonight, and will be home later than usual. Little Amy and Annie will go to bed first, all right. Mag said with a smile. Oh, all right. Amy nodded obediently, and slid off the barstool. Let's go upstairs. Mag brought the two little ones upstairs, and made them wash up first. Only after the little ones washed up and changed into their pajamas did he begin telling them bedtime stories. Mag sat on the edge of the bed, and asked the two expectant little ones, What stories do you want to listen to today? Amy raised her hand up, and said, I want to listen to the prince and princess stories. Annie nodded too. You already know about the prince and princess story at such a young age. That won't do. Mag rubbed his chin. The princes in the fairy tales usually led a life of luxury and debauchery. For example, the prince who harbored evil intentions towards the unconscious Snow White. For example, the lecherous prince who was searching all over the country for Cinderella with a slipper. And for example, the heartless and blind prince who failed to recognize the Little Mermaid. He had to impart and establish proper life values for the two little girls from a young age. He couldn't let them wallow in such unbalanced stories. We won't be telling prince and princess stories today. Let's listen to The Little Horse Crosses the River today, Mag said with a smile. All right. Amy nodded, and immediately curiously asked, why is the little horse crossing the river? We have to start the story from the stables. A mare and beautiful little foal lived in this stable. One day, the mare told the little foal, you are already big enough. Can you help mom do something? The little foal pranced around as it answered, why not? I am very happy to help you. The mare, Mag told them the educational yet entertaining story with a gentle voice. The two little ones were also listening very attentively. The little foal finally crossed the river. So, the river wasn't as shallow as the old buffalo said, nor was the river as deep as the squirrel said. Mag ended the story. However, the two little ones were still staring at him without any hint of sleepiness. The silence persisted for a while. And then, Amy couldn't help asking. And, the little horse crossed the river, Mag answered instinctively. Amy blinked, and said, so, a little horse crossed the river became a story. Are you trying to make us sleep by cheating? Mag murmured. He found that the little one was getting harder to teach now, so he had to use the tone of a primary school teacher as he said, therefore, what is the moral of this story? We have to learn how to swim so that we won't become stories that will be used to make children sleep, Amy said with a serious expression. They were already sure that a devil had escaped and disappeared. Meanwhile, Rankster had to have had a battle with that devil. No one knew what had happened to him, and his body hadn't been found at the cave. This, without a doubt, was very bad news. All of them had seen the horrors of the devil. Even the combined efforts of the 10th tier powerhouses couldn't kill it. If Alex had not set off the tribulation lighting in the Thunderstorm Mountains, and the formation masters from the Moon Nation had not helped to repair the seal spell formation, that great old one would have been terrorizing the continent now. However, a devil had already broken out of the seal and disappeared now. It was, without a doubt, the most unstable factor on the Norland continent. An uncontrollable existence was no doubt the most dangerous. The memory of the Urba tribe tragedy was still entrenched in all their minds. Nobody wanted the same tragedy to befall their race and tribe. Douglas broke the silence by speaking in a low voice. We need to find it as soon as possible. Otherwise, nobody can rest in peace. The problem now is how can we find it? Irina looked at him. Rankster belongs to your Frost Dragon tribe, and most probably only he knows where the devil is now. Rankster has already been missing for 3 years. We have no idea where to look for him, either. Douglas shook his head. This matter was already beyond the Frost Dragon's capability. The representatives were arguing, and they were getting increasingly agitated. However, nobody came out with a feasible solution. Arguing is meaningless. The devil's existence has already threatened all the races. The only way that we can prevail when facing such a terrifying and difficult to handle enemy is to put on a united front. Michael broke up the argument in a grave voice. What do you suggest, Michael? Lewis asked Michael. All the representatives looked at Michael, who was the host. With a severe expression, Michael said, it's not practical to look all over the continent for a devil that has hidden itself. If it is the other half of the devil in the Thunderstorm Mountains, then it's very possible that it will go to destroy the seal and release that devil. I think we should organize a powerful reserve force so that we can handle the devil that can appear at the Thunderstorm Mountains anytime. At the same time, we should set up another seal spell formation close to that original seal. We can lure that devil into the seal spell formation in case we fail to kill it, and then look for solutions to kill it. All the representatives nodded thoughtfully after hearing that. Compared to the meaningless arguments, Michael's suggestion was at least very feasible. We will need the Moon Nation's formation masters to set up the spell formations if we need to rebuild the seal. Why are they not present? Sean asked with a frown. This is the trial of all the races on the Norland continent. They are safely tucked away on the moon. They are doing us a favor when they help us, but they are not required to do so. Who do you think you are? How can you so shamelessly expect them to help us? Irina looked at Sean mockingly with a hint of coldness in her smile. Sean's face fell, and a hint of displeasure flashed across his face. He coldly snorted. You should know that this matter concerns the safety of all races too. What's the point of cracking wise? Irina looked at Sean, and coldly said, to me, the Norland continent's biggest threat now isn't one devil, but your Roth Empire's millions of cavalrists who are ready for battle. I want to ask, would the Roth Empire sign on the peace accord after all the races subdued the devil together? The various representatives hushed and shifted their gazes between the two of them. Alex sliced off one of Josh's ears, and left a declaration of killing him. Alex and Irina's feud with the Roth Empire was already in the open. Irina and Alex were no nice guys. After Irina came out of her seclusion and Alex reappeared, the people who had been present on that rainy night died one by one. Now, only the Roth Empire's royal family who had played a leading part in that was left. Meanwhile, the Roth Empire had already grown into a giant in the past 100 years. Compared to the scattered tribes of the giant dragons, the Roth Empire was firmly in the grasp of Andrei. Be it the 1 million of cavalry troops or the countless magic casters from the Magus Tower, they already had the scale and power that the various races had to be wary of. The peace meeting would begin in a few days, and Andrei's ambition was obvious. If the Norland continent was to descend into a racial war again, that missing devil was indeed no longer important. Sean furrowed his brows even tighter. Obviously, he couldn't give a clear answer to this question. Andrei didn't give him a clear answer before he came, either. He knew what Andrei wanted. He wanted the entire world to belong to the Roth Empire. He wanted all the races to bow to the Roth Empire, and even become their slaves. Sean wanted that too. However, he couldn't say such words now, and Andrei wouldn't allow him to give such a stupid answer, either. Our Roth Empire is willing to team up with all of you to deal with the devil. This is for the Norland continent's benefit. As for the peace meeting, we have our requests. We don't decide whether we will sign the peace accord. That is decided by the various races' attitudes, Sean said gravely. He managed to sound calm and steady in the midst of the 10th-tier powerhouses. You all are asking for the impossible according to Josh's explanation. Lewis jeered mercilessly. Sean looked at Lewis, and calmly said, the Roth Empire has always been practical. We don't fight an unprepared war, and we don't make requests that can't be fulfilled. All the various representatives' expressions changed slightly, and they began to look at Sean with a complex gaze. They had to admit that the 100 years of peace had given the Roth Empire unparalleled prosperity and development. This was how it became such a headache now. Are you getting carried away, or I can't lift a sword anymore? Right then, a mocking voice appeared outside the meeting hall. Everyone looked towards the door in unison. The doors of the meeting hall gradually opened to the two sides. A man wearing a black action suit and a mask and carrying a heavy sword slowly walked in. Alex! A glint burst out in Sean's eyes, and he instinctively clenched his fists. Meanwhile, the 10th-tier powerhouses surrounding Sean were staring at the door warily, and began to get closer to the prince. I came to fetch my wife and put an arrogant prick down at the same time. I don't think you gentlemen would mind, right? There was still a hint of mockery in Mag's voice. If it weren't because of his status, many of them would have already taught this arrogant prick a lesson. The arrogant pricks of the Edward family were indeed all hateful. However, everything had its vanquisher. They all became cowards whenever they met Alex. The other representatives still had to take Sean's identity and their race's benefits and interests into consideration. But Alex didn't have to. He was single and all alone now, and he was the extremely powerful kind of single and alone person. He could do whatever he pleased without any care. He sliced off Josh's ear and issued him a death threat, but the Roth Empire didn't make a single sound. Therefore, it was perfect timing for Alex to appear when Sean was showing off. Mag really came here to fetch his wife. He realized that Irina had not returned after putting the two children to bed, so he thought he ought to show his face at such an important moment. Hence, he came to the city lord's castle. Bumping into Sean showing off was just pure coincidence. However, since he saw it, of course he had to put him down. Although Sean did not take part in that rainy night's assassination, he had to have contributed to the military's silence. Furthermore, he had been sending people to search for his whereabouts in the past 3 years. Sean had been worried that Mag hadn't been completely dead, so he wasn't a good guy anyway. Sean, who was targeted by Mag, retracted his fists from the table unnaturally. That pair of eyes was still as dangerous as before, and it even had an additional hint of hostility now. The current Alex was even more powerful than the Alex before. After defeating the devil and sealing it, Alex's status had reached an extremely elevated height in the hearts of the people of the Roth Empire, and perhaps even the whole Norland continent. Alex, long time no see. Sean looked at Mag with a smile, as if he had just met a long-lost friend. You don't have to pretend to be on familiar terms with me. You and I are enemies at most. Even if I don't kill you today, I won't welcome you with a smile, Mag said with a smirk mercilessly. Sean's smile froze on his face instantly. Exhilarating. All the representatives' expressions softened, with them feeling extremely gratified. Irina was also looking at Mag smilingly. She didn't expect him to be so good at arguing now. He had to have learned some of it from her. Even though the powerhouses around Sean looked furious, they didn't dare to say anything. Sean quickly calmed down, and said to Mag, "You might have some misunderstandings about the past incident, but it isn't convenient for me to elaborate now. Now, our common enemy is the devil. I hope you can put aside the past grievances and work together with us to kill that escaped devil or seal it again." Mag chuckled. "You might have some misunderstandings about the meaning of misunderstanding. You and I both know very well what happened back then. However, I indeed won't kill you now. I will settle the scores with you slowly after we deal with the devil and the peace meeting." Sean looked severe after he heard that. "Alex, since you already came, why not sit down and join in the discussion for a solution? After all, Princess Irina and you discovered that cave. I wonder what you think about it," Michael said with a smile as he broke up the tense atmosphere. "Whatever Irina said is what I wanted to say." Mag flicked a glance at Irina before continuing, "I have no idea where to look for it, either. However, building a new seal spell formation as soon as possible is definitely right." Michael nodded, and said, "Since this is the case, I will pay a visit to the Moon Nation's princess at Mamie Restaurant tomorrow. I heard that she has already returned to Mamie Restaurant today. Since this is the case, you guys continue with the discussion. We'll be going home first." Mag went to Irina, extended his hand out to her, and gently said, "Let's go." Irina curled her lips, grasped Mag's hand, and walked towards the door. All the representatives watched them disappear outside the meeting hall with a grievous expression. Nobody expected to see them show off their love in the midst of such an intense meeting. Sean heaved a breath of relief inwardly too. He slowly relaxed his tightly clenched fists before leaning back against the back of his chair slowly. Only then did he realize his clothes were already drenched in his sweat. After leaving the city lord's castle, Irina looked at Mag smilingly. "Tisk, tisk. You came to fetch your wife?" "Yes. That's correct." Mag removed his mask and smiled at Irina too, but he didn't let go of her hand. "Where are the little ones?" "They have just fallen asleep, so I came to fetch you," Mag said honestly. You've done well." Irina nodded. "Are you hungry?" Mag asked gently. "Do you want to eat something?" "Yes." Irina nodded honestly before she thought seriously, and said, "I want to eat hot pot. I want beef roll, mutton roll, tripe, pig's brain, and everything." Are we eating hot pot now? Yes. I haven't eaten dinner tonight. The city lord's castle's packet food is horrible. Irina nodded with an innocent gleam in her eyes. All right. I will make it for you shortly. Mag's heart softened, and he agreed with a smile. Irina sent them back to the restaurant by teleporting. You take a seat first, and I will go prepare the hot pot ingredients. Mag poured a glass of warm water to Irina before going into the kitchen. Mag had kept some of the dinner's bone broth for Irina, but it was perfect to be used as the hot pot soup base now. Soon, Mag carried a double-flavored pot out of the kitchen. Then, he carried another 2 big trays out. They were filled with all kinds of dishes and especially mixed dipping sauce. Irina's taste was relatively lighter, so the red soup base was only mildly spicy. It was specially made for the lady boss. Mag had made it to suit her taste. It was more flavorful than the clear soup, but it wouldn't make her feel uncomfortable. Cook the beef roll and mutton roll first before cooking the vegetables in the clear soup. Irina added the ingredients into the hot pot plate by plate. She didn't forget to remind Mag, I'll leave the tripe and duck intestine to you. All right. I promise I will make the most delicious tripe and duck intestine for you. Mag picked up his long chopsticks with a smile, and began dipping a duck intestine in the boiling part of the hot pot. The thinly sliced mutton roll and beef roll were swiftly cooked. Irina dipped them in the dipping sauce before popping them into her mouth. The thinly sliced mutton cooled down a little in the dipping sauce before it was fed into the mouth. The temperature and texture were perfect. Irina's face had a satisfied smile as she picked up the beef roll and mutton roll quickly. She made a very soft and happy chewing sound. As long as she was fast enough, the mutton roll and beef roll in the hot pot would not get overcooked. Mag dipped the cooked duck intestine in the dipping sauce before putting it into Irina's small bowl. Irina popped that duck intestine into her mouth, and made crunchy chewing sounds. Her pretty brows and eyes curved into crescents as she nodded, and said, "Yummy! Yummy!" Irina and Mag, who were happily eating, froze together, and turned to look at the staircase. Amy was standing at the staircase, and rubbing her eyes as she looked at them with narrowed eyes. Ugly Duckling yawned as it missed a step, and came tumbling down the stairs. It bumped its head against a corner of the table. It looked up and meowed at Mag in a daze. Annie also popped her head out from the back of the staircase, and looked at the steaming hot pot on the table curiously. Perhaps, the smell was so enticing that Amy got worked up immediately, and angrily said, "Father! Mother! You guys are eating supper behind our backs again. And it's hot pot some more." There was a hint of embarrassment in Mag's smile. Irina picked up a piece of fat beef roll, and smilingly said to Amy and Annie, "You two are awake. Do you want to come over and join us?" "All right." A smile appeared on Amy's puffy face immediately as she skipped forward, ate that sliced beef roll, and chewed happily, as if she had already forgotten about being angry. She didn't forget to praise, "The sliced beef is so scrumptious." Mag looked at Amy, who was eating happily, with a complex expression. The best way to console a chowhound was indeed to stuff her face with good food. This was faster and easier than any explanation. "Annie, come and eat something too." Mag waved his hand at Annie. Annie walked over quietly, and sat down on the chair next to Mag. "Take it. Dip it in the hot pot yourself. I will go make the dipping sauce for the two of you." Mag gave her a pair of new chopsticks before getting up to go to the kitchen. He needed to get more ingredients besides making the dipping sauce. Amy had already started eating, and she was as voracious as Irina. "Father, make my dipping sauce spicier." "This hot pot isn't spicy at all," Amy said to Mag's back. "All right." Mag's voice could be heard from the kitchen. As she was a young contestant who could withstand the insanely spicy taste, this mildly spicy soup was indeed not enough for Amy. Mag went to grill some crayfish and oysters in the midst of eating the hot pot. Although it wasn't healthy to eat supper so late at night, it felt great to eat hot pot and grilled seafood together as a family. "How nice! I'll let this pass this time, but you guys have to call me for supper next time. Amy didn't forget to remind Meg and Irina seriously after she was done eating and leaving the table. All right, we will definitely call you next time. Meg nodded with a smile. Meow. Ugly Duckling let go of the crayfish's claws reluctantly, looked up, and meowed. Count me in. Ugly Duckling had gotten fatter after obtaining Amy's approval in the past few days and letting itself go. Annie had learned Irina's gracefulness. She stayed quietly at the side after she put down the chopsticks. However, judging from the smile on her lips, she liked this supper very much. All right, you two go upstairs to play for a while first before going to bed. You cannot lie down immediately after eating. Mag waved his hands, and chased the two little ones upstairs. The playroom could help them digest some of the supper. Meanwhile, he began to clean up the dining table. Irina helped Mag clear the table, and casually asked, "What do you plan to do with Sean? We can't kill him now. We would be sending Josh straight up to the throne if Sean died." Mag shook his head. "Then, we will kill both of them together. I'm afraid Andrei will immediately start a war that engulfs the entire continent if we kill them both. Furthermore, that war would be hysterical and at all costs. Then, we will kill Andrei too." Mag chuckled. "You know that the most difficult person to kill in this world is him. That old tortoise." Irina pursed her lips, but she had to agree with Mag. "Young master, what are you looking for?" an old butler helplessly asked Harrison as he followed behind him, and watched him toss his clothes all over the floor. "I am looking for my black jacket, the one that made me look slimmer." Harrison poked his head out from the cupboard, and asked the old butler, "Do you know where it is?" As someone who was going on his first date tomorrow, Harrison was indeed a little nervous. In order to leave a good impression on Georgina, he had made many requests regarding his image, including his clothes. However, after trying on many clothes, he was very dissatisfied with his fat image in the mirror. His maid couldn't find the black jacket that he loved the most in the past, so he had to come look for it himself. "Are you talking about that black jacket that you wore 10 years ago?" the butler asked. "Yes, yes, yes. Do you know where it is?" Harrison's eyes lit up. "You have thrown it away 9.5 years ago because it didn't fit you anymore." The old butler shook his head. "You were only 75 kilograms when you custom-made that jacket. You wouldn't have been able to wear it even if you had kept it until now." "It's that really so?" Harrison was slightly dejected. So, that handsome young man in his impression wasn't due to that black jacket, but due to the fact that he was thin back then. "Take a look, this is the one that you custom-made again when you were 125 kilograms. You might be able to fit in if you squeeze a little." The old butler picked up a black jacket from the pile of clothes on the floor. "Come, try it out." Harrison was excited again. With the old butler's help, he forced his gigantic body into this obviously ill-fitting jacket. This is a tummy that makes one feel sad. The jacket barely fitted him. Other than the arms that couldn't move, the tightly bound tummy that resembled a pot was especially eye-catching. "Young master, wear comfortable clothes to the date. There is no point in making yourself look so disheveled." The butler looked at Harrison. "If the young lady is interested in you, it's definitely not because of your body, but because of your interesting soul." "That's true." Harrison chuckled, and his expression quickly froze. He looked at the old butler with suspicion, and said, "Why do I feel like you are scolding me? Why would I scold you? I watched you grow up. Let's wear this tomorrow. It will make your soul look even more interesting." The butler took a frock with a little duckling embroidered on the chest from the pile of clothes. "The young ladies like such refreshing styles. Didn't you say that yourself too?" "All right. I'll wear this tomorrow." Harrison nodded. He felt that his old butler was rather reliable at times. "Is my soul really interesting?" Harrison asked the old butler again to confirm when he was about to go out. They all say that beautiful bodies look the same, but an interesting soul is over 150 kilograms. You, by the way, fit that description perfectly. The old butler nodded with a serious expression. The Roth Empire was still continuing to consolidate its feudal dynasty with centralized power. The Wind Forest had lost its free soul, and the elves began to live like humans. The goblins had dug deep caves to prepare for the next racial war. The orc tribes were still keeping to their nomadic traditions. The demons had endless fights for territory. The giant dragons soared in the sky, but they still had the most severe racial suppression. However, the Chaos City continued to open up and innovate, and it changed from a piece of barren land and a war criminal's prison to a prospering city within 100 years. Milo and Garland got up shortly after dawn. They put on their little bags, and walked on the streets of Chaos City. They looked at the breakfast shops that gradually opened up for business as steam rose up into the air, and saw the blissful smiles on the faces of those people who woke up early. This was a lively city. Such liveliness wasn't commonly seen in Rodu. Those people who lived at the bottom rungs of society would never have any changes in their lives no matter how hard they strived. One would not see the passion and anticipation for life on their faces. Meanwhile in Chaos City, you could see the smiles on people's faces everywhere. Even if they were just buying a pancake that cost 1 copper coin at the roadside, they could make eating it seem so delicious. The sense of blissfulness was perhaps the most attractive and mesmerizing side of this city. I used to think that there was no nice food in this city, so the people here had to be miserable. However, looking at it now, my thinking was narrow-minded. Milo laughed embarrassedly. Yes, if I hadn't come here myself, I would have never expected this city would be so blissful. Garland nodded in agreement. Furthermore, there is also a restaurant that all the chowhounds in this world envy and look forward to in this city now. I am very curious about Mamie Restaurant's breakfast now, Milo said with a smile. Today could be a very memorable day in his career. This was the first time that he was going to interview a restaurateur about the stories behind his dishes. In the past, he usually made up dirty 10,000-word stories for those bosses himself. Milo and Garland were already very early, but they didn't expect some customers were already lining up at the door. Apart from them, there were also some cleaners who were congregating at the door. They seemed to be waiting for their meals too. Did Mamie Restaurant lower its price for breakfast? Milo asked the customers lining up in front curiously. That customer seemed to know what Milo was thinking, and smilingly explained, "The price on the menu doesn't change. Boss Mag has been providing breakfast for the cleaners for some time. He let them have a piping hot breakfast after working for a few hours." "Oh, I see. Boss Mag is really a good person." Milo nodded thoughtfully. Given Mamie Restaurant's high prices, providing breakfast for so many cleaners was a big expenditure. What was even more precious was how the preparation work that he had to do before opening for business definitely compressed his rest time. Soon after, the restaurant's door opened, and a female staff member carried a huge iron bucket out single-handedly. She began to distribute the congee with pork and century egg to the cleaners orderly. The heat, together with the aroma of the congee with pork and century egg, spread everywhere. "It smells so good." Milo's Adam's apple moved. He looked at the cleaners carrying big bowls of congee with pork and century egg, and mumbled, "I suddenly feel like being a cleaner." Garland gave him a side glance, and said, "They might not want you." Milo ordered a bowl of congee with pork and century egg for breakfast and one set of yoshao and soybean milk, following the advice of a customer sharing the table with him. The congee with pork and century egg refreshed his image of congee. The century egg, which he didn't know came from what animal matched with the pork, was actually so delicious. He felt his body warm up after eating a whole bowl of congee. Meanwhile, the yoshao with soybean milk had subverted all his imagination about breakfast. The crispy yoshao was so crunchy and aromatic in his mouth. It was better than any fried snacks. It even had a tinge of sweetness, and the more he chewed, the better it tasted. He then took a sip of the sweet and tasty soybean milk. Its texture was smoother than cow's milk, and a fragrance lingered in his mouth after he swallowed it. Of course, this wasn't the extreme way of eating it. After soaking the cut yueshao in the soybean milk, he picked up the slightly softened yueshao with the chopsticks, and took a bite. The soft yet chewy yueshao together with the aromatic sweetness of the soybean milk, be it in terms of texture or taste, were both elevated many times. It became a completely new food. After drinking the last drop of soybean milk in the bowl, Milo put down his chopsticks, and praised, "Boss Mag is really a genius to come up with such an exquisite combination. I agree with you on that." Garland also put down his bowl while still longing for more. No wonder Randy and the others don't want to leave here. It isn't because they don't have any pursuits or ambitions, but because they don't want to leave after they come. It's a paradise here. After the breakfast ended, Milo and Garland were received by Mag. Mag poured a cup of tea for Milo and Garland each before he smilingly said, "Can this be considered as an interview? Speaking of this is the first time that we are conducting an interview with a chef. If you have read our magazine before, you should know that our style concerning food is always a little severe and judgmental," Garland also said with a smile. "So in this case, I should feel honored." "No, it's our honor to be able to get Boss Mag to talk about the stories behind the scrumptious dishes. We're bowled over by your exquisite culinary skills and innovative and unique thinking," Garland quickly added. He didn't want to give Mag an arrogant impression. Mag looked at Garland and smiled. "Before we begin the interview today, can I presumptuously ask about your perfect foods influence? For example, the number of subscribers for the new edition." Garland was a little surprised by Mag's question, but he still quickly smiled, and replied, "Perfect Food is the leader of the gourmet magazines. After decades of development, it has become one of the most influential gourmet magazines on the Norland continent. There are tens of thousands of copies issued every month, and hundreds of thousands of people were affected. It was approximately equal to 1 million readers. Even Princess Vanessa of the Roth Empire is our magazine's faithful reader. She even wrote me a letter before," Milo added with a smile. Mag flicked a glance at Milo, and mildly said, "She seems to read every gourmet magazine, and she will write to columnists, whom she deems to have a bread and butter issue, to encourage them to persevere." Milo. Garland's gaze shifted all around as he tried very hard not to laugh out loud. Vanessa said that herself. She had been doing that very frequently in the past few years. She would sometimes give these food critics some money to tide them over through difficult times. In this world where there was a lack of entertainment, and information couldn't be shared readily, it was already very good for a gourmet magazine to achieve this standard. Mag knew that Garland's so-called 1 million readers were an exaggeration. However, the sales of tens of thousands copies of magazines were true. This meant that as long as he accepted the interview, this interview would appear in the latest edition bought by those readers. "What would you like to ask?" Mag poured himself a cup of tea too before leaning back against the chair comfortably. "Then, can we begin from Mr. Mag's learning journey? Mr. Mag, you have such extraordinary culinary skills at such a young age, and you continue to create so many delicious dishes. You must have come from a culinary family, and begun learning cooking when you were very young, right?" Garland asked with a smile. "No, it isn't like that." Mag shook his head, and mildly said, "Being a chef is simply my interest. I didn't learn culinary skills from anybody, nor was I born in a culinary household. I felt that there was a need to elevate the culinary standard of this world a few months ago, so I opened this restaurant." Garland. Milo. The two of them looked at Mag with a meaningful gaze. "Wow, bro. You showed off so much that we don't know how to continue with the conversation." They thought that Boss Mag looked very easygoing, so the interview would be conducted in a very relaxed ambience. They didn't expect Boss Mag to show all his cards as soon as they sat down. Mag looked at their expressions, and wondered a little. Did he make things sound too simple? At the end of the day, Garland was a professional chief editor. He swiftly realized the way that Mag talked would easily lead to explosive topics, so he continued by asking, "You said you wanted to elevate this world's culinary standard. What do you mean by that?" "By letting more people eat real delicious food, and not just make do with ordinary, normal food. By exposing those fake delicious foods and elevating the people's connoisseurship towards good food. Perhaps, even letting everyone learn 1 or 2 dishes that they could cook by themselves." Mag smiled. "That is my vision and my so-called elevating the culinary standard." Milo's mouth was slightly agape as he stared at Mag with shock and admiration. This was also what he was hoping for. "This is really a great and beautiful vision," Garland praised sincerely. As a gourmand, he, too, hoped to see that happen one day. "You have created so many special and delicious foods. Can we ask where you get your inspiration from? We have never heard of most of these foods before, and cannot even imagine they can be cooked in that manner. For example, the beggar's chicken that is covered in the mud casing and the tofu pudding made from soya beans." Mag smiled, and said, "I am simply borrowing from my predecessors, and life is the source of all inspiration. What you don't know or deem to be non-existent is simply the limitations of your knowledge." Although Mag looked humble on the surface, looking from another angle, he seemed to be mocking those chefs who didn't know how to change. Garland looked at Milo, and wanted to know how Milo, who was very good at understanding hidden meanings, comprehend these words. Milo raised his eyebrows to show that this was indeed rather arrogant. It would definitely make those self-important chefs furious, and make the magazine even more widely discussed. "I tried your Buddha jumps over the wall yesterday, and its exquisite taste is unforgettable. It even made my hair grow after being bald for over 10 years. May I ask, how do you create such delicious food that can make the hair regrow at the same time? A lot of the seafood in this dish is very hard to come by in Chaos City." Garland quickly followed by a question that he was very curious about. Mag flicked a glance at Garland's head. His originally bald head indeed had fine hair growing out like the forest after a rain. Judging from his experience, Mag nodded slightly. "You will need to eat another 2 doses and pay attention to rest at the same time so that it can grow properly." "Yes." Garland quickly nodded, following the doctor's orders. Mag and Garland looked at each other, and then suddenly something wasn't quite right. "I'm sorry. It's my occupational hazard." Mag touched his nose awkwardly. However, Garland seriously said, "You are really a good doctor. As a chef, making delicious food is the most basic requirement. As for what other effects would happen after the taste is achieved, it's already beyond my control." Mag shook his head. "Therefore, I didn't know that Buddha jumps over the wall is able to treat baldness when I was coming up with it. It was a pure surprise when the customers discovered that effect after the dish was released." Garland pondered. "Perhaps, this is the give-back of the exquisite taste." "What an interesting explanation." Mag smiled too. The interview went on in a relaxed atmosphere. Garland's questions weren't too tricky, and Mag basically told them all that he knew, so that made both their work easier. About an hour later, Garland appreciatively said to Mag, "Thank you for accepting our interview and letting us understand so many stories behind all these delicious foods. I believe even more people will fall in love with Mamie Restaurant and become your fans after this issue's interview." "You're very welcome." Mag smiled. He actually quite liked sharing his experience of success. It felt like showing off. Oh, this description was too vulgar. It should be called sharing happiness. Garland asked all that he should ask, and didn't mention a single word about the things he shouldn't. As a gourmet magazine's chief editor, he still had some understanding of chefs. "When will this article be released?" Mag asked curiously. "The article will be in the new issue coming out at the end of this month," Garland replied with a smile. Actually, the content of the new issue had already been set and even sent to the printing workshop. However, Garland changed his mind after this interview. He intended to add this exclusive interview written by Milo to this new issue, and make it the main selling point. The perfect food hadn't been doing well under the combined attack of meatitarian and vegetarianism for the past few months. This would be their fight to reverse the situation. Mag nodded, and then changed the topic. Does your magazine have a column that teaches people how to cook? Hey! Both Garland and Milo stared at Mag with bewilderment. It is a gourmet tutorial column, Mag explained. Garland got it. He shook his head, and said, we don't have it currently. You should know that a recipe is the most important thing to a chef, and they wouldn't share it easily, let alone publish it in a magazine that is so widely read. Mag nodded his head slightly. Looking from a chef's point of view, this thinking wasn't hard to understand. However, it was just this fixed-minded thinking that caused the extremely slow innovation speed of delicious food and a standstill for the entire culinary world. I would like to have a gourmet tutorial column in your perfect food magazine, Mag said to Garland seriously. Hey! Garland was stunned before revealing an exhilarated expression. He even said in a trembling voice, why you are saying that you want to have a gourmet tutorial column in our perfect food to teach cooking. Milo also looked at Mag with shock, and couldn't quite believe his ears. Yes. Mag nodded. I will share a simple and easy-to-learn home-cooked meal recipe in every issue. The kind that the readers could learn according to the article. Garland quickly calculated the benefits that this could bring to perfect food in his mind. Given Mamie Restaurant's current reputation, if they could undertake its exclusive gourmet tutorial column, Perfect Food would become the undisputed leader in the gourmet magazine's world, and completely crush both meatitarian and vegetarianism. Garland said to Mag gravely, if Mr. Mag has this idea, we at Perfect Food will do our very best to cooperate and support in setting up your column. We will also pay you a good author's remuneration. Mag immediately got straight to the point. Then let's talk about the exact collaboration details now. Let's not rush to set up the column first. We can decide when to launch the column after this month's issue is released and we see the market's feedback. By then, you can put a notice in this month's issue. It could perhaps achieve an even better result. Your suggestion is very good. We will do that. Garland took out his little notebook, and took that down. Increasing readers' anticipation was what they always did, but this was the first time that they were putting out a notice. However, it sounded very feasible. Mag discussed with them the gourmet tutorial for another 30 minutes. They basically set all the particulars of their collaboration. Garland looked at Mag with anticipation. Mr. Mag, are you really not willing to sign the exclusive license agreement with us? We will give you the best remuneration and strongest promotion. We promise to maximize your fame and interests. Exclusivity means monopoly. My wish is to make all dishes easy to make, and not earn a little remuneration. Mag shook his head with a smile. All right. We respect your wishes. Garland nodded. Although it was a pity, he didn't harass him. Smiling, Milo said, Boss Mag, if you have any problems with writing, please feel free to write a letter to me. Although I don't dare to say I am an expert at this area, I have at least already written for 10 odd years. All right. Mag nodded with a smile, but he secretly scolded inwardly, you are my junior when it comes to writing an article. Although he had already begun to study how to reduce the manufacturing costs of the Magic Vision, shrinking its size and making it suitable for family use, it was still long before it could be made into an entertainment device that every household loved. However, wasn't it nice to buy a magazine for 10 odd copper coins, and learn a tip-top recipe apart from reading about the gossip in the culinary world? Mag didn't want fame or influence, but real apprentice fans who could provide him with the power of faith. He wanted to use Perfect Food, which was a good platform to conduct cloud teaching, to gain more fans, and more people could learn to cook from him. It would allow him to gain fans and upgrade while promoting good food at the same time. As for why he didn't want to sign the exclusivity contract, this involved Mag's greater ambition. A top gourmet magazine could have about 1 million fans, but what about 10 gourmet magazines? Taking away the same readers, there could be at least 5 million fans. Jumping out of the small pond of gourmet magazines, if he could collaborate with those tabloid news magazines that were even more popular with the people, he could gain contact with even more groups of fans. He didn't care about that little remuneration fee from the magazine press. Doing anything else was easier than earning money through writing. You have to give me a treat tonight. You have got Boss Mag, and perfect food is going to take off now. Milo slapped Garland's shoulder hard with an obviously excited expression. It's a pity that we didn't get the exclusivity. Garland sighed, but he couldn't hide the smile on his face. This was indeed a surprise. He thought it was already great to be able to interview Mag, and make sure that the next issue was going to sell out. He didn't expect to get Mag to write a gourmet tutorial column for the magazine after the interview. A pay raise and promotion for him were expected. Speaking of it, Boss Mag is really a great chef. The usual chefs can't wait to bring their recipes to their graves, yet Boss Mag is willing to share the recipes that he created without any remuneration. Moreover, he is going to share it in a magazine with all the good food lovers in the world, Milo praised with wonder. Garland also stopped smiling, and said with admiration, "Indeed." He said he wanted to elevate the food standard of this world, and he wasn't just saying. He is really doing something about it, and taking out the most precious thing for it. Michael came to the ice cream shop, and found Bablat, who was scooping ice cream for the children. He smilingly said, "Princess Bablat, can I speak to you in private?" "Wait a minute." Bablat gave the ice cream to the children before turning to look at Michael. "May I ask what it is about?" Michael looked at the children around him, and said to Bablat, "Why don't we talk outside?" "All right." Bablat nodded, and followed Michael out of the ice cream shop. They went to a quiet corner of the park. Michael stood next to a bench, and apologetically said, "Sorry to interrupt your work. Because it is an emergency, I hope Princess Bablat won't mind this." "It's fine. Please go on." Bablat had a good impression of Michael. "Princess Bablat has fought along with us, so I don't intend to hide this from you. The devil has appeared again, and it has already escaped from the seal," Michael said straightforwardly. "Escaped?" Bablat was shocked. Her fear of the devil wasn't completely eradicated yet, so she was indeed shocked by this news. Michael shook his head. "It isn't the one from the Thunderstorm Mountains. Alex and Irina found a new seal under Dragon Island, but the seal was already broken, and the great old one in that seal had already disappeared. Which means there could be a devil around us right now." Bablat's eyes widened, and she looked around her instinctively. "We don't have to worry too much now. We can definitely find its traces quickly if it appears in Chaos City. The biggest problem now is that we cannot identify its actual location," Michael consoled her with a smile. "Then why are you here looking for me, City Lord? Although I am quite capable, I don't think I stand a chance against a devil." Bablat looked at Michael perplexedly. "We are more worried about that devil going to the Thunderstorm Mountains to break the seal, rescue the octopus monster, and rejoin their bodies. By then, we might be facing an opponent who is so powerful that it will be unmatched." Michael's expression became gradually graver. "Therefore, on behalf of Chaos City and all the races of the Norland continent, I humbly ask the Moon Nation to help us build another seal spell formation in the Thunderstorm Mountains so that we could trap that devil when it appears again." Bablat understood now. She nodded in agreement after a brief consideration. "I will pass these words to my father, but I cannot promise that the Moon Nation will definitely send people over." "Thank you, Princess Bablat. Please tell the King of Moon Nation that the Norland continent will remember your kindness and return your favor." "All right." Bablat nodded. Beyond the city, on the peak of a rock mountain, Douglas looked at Elizabeth with a hint of pity as he said, "Elizabeth, you should already know that your father is most likely no longer with us. Come back with me. You are still one of us frost dragons." I have stopped thinking so after the day that Alex brought me away. Elizabeth looked at Douglas expressionlessly. She didn't hide the contempt in her eyes. I will go back, but not now, and not in the condition of being pitted. Douglas frowned and looked at Elizabeth with pursed lips. He seemed to have seen that stubborn dragon youth in the past. Anybody could sit on the frost dragon's throne, but it will belong to me eventually. Let Fox sit on it for a while first. I will take back whatever I have lost, Elizabeth said coldly before she turned around and stepped out. The frost under her feet consolidated into a giant snowflake, and she disappeared from the mountaintop. Douglas stood on the peak alone for a long time, but he had a relieved smile on his face. This lass indeed resembles Rankster. Since this is the case, I don't have to worry about Lewis trying to poach her away. This child still belongs to us, the Frost Dragons. Georgina saw that big guy holding a big red flower, and stomping his feet under the stone statue from afar. He was wearing a comfortable long robe, which made his big round body look even more rotund, but he looked very comfortable and relaxed. His good friend had already had his fourth child, while he was only taking the first step to his date. Take a deep breath, it's all right. I'm just going to be looking for food, and I'm good at that. Harrison took a deep breath. After that, he exhaled out some white smoke, and stomped his feet. He had already been standing there for more than an hour. Georgina did not stand him up. He just came a little earlier than the agreed time. He was just an hour and a half early. After all, it was his first time, and he was afraid that something which would cause a delay might happen on the way. If he did not arrive in time, he would be standing her up. After coming, he thought that he should let himself get used to the environment, and also practice the lines he came up with last night. Therefore, he did not stay in the horse-drawn carriage. Just like that, an hour had passed. When I see Georgina, I would first make a very handsome pose, and then with a very demanding and gentle tone, give her this flower. After that, I will invite her to search for snacks in a very gentlemanly way, yes. That's the whole procedure. First, Harrison paced around, and muttered to himself seriously. Hi, Mr. Harrison. Just then, a voice came from behind Harrison. Ah! Harrison was stunned. He quickly turned around, and saw Georgina, who appeared behind him out of nowhere. He said in a flustered tone, Hi, Miss Georgina. Georgina was not dressed in black from head to toe like yesterday. Instead, she wore a grey and white striped cotton dress with a black hide jacket on the outside. She was wearing a pair of short deer hide boots that had a ring of short fur at the collar of the boots. Her face is very small, and her hair was let down, hiding half of her face. She was very pale, but looked way more energetic than yesterday. There was more color on her face. With the change of clothes, Georgina looked more youthful. Her faint lilac eyes were also full of spirit and life. However, after changing out of the baggy cotton top and bottoms, Georgina looked even smaller and frailier. She looked as though she would be blown away if the wind was a little stronger. That made Harrison's heart ache for her. Georgina blushed under Harrison's gaze. She subconsciously grabbed the corner of her skirt as her heart raced. Her cousin chose her outfit for today. When she heard that Georgina and Harrison were going out to look for food, Georgina's cousin brought her out for shopping, and picked this dress out. She also brought Georgina to the salon to style her hair, which was neglected for 3 years. However, she was still unconfident. She knew she never had been a pretty or adorable lady. She was afraid that Harrison would detest her after seeing her. Now, Georgina wanted to say something to break the silence. F for you. Harrison handed her the large red flower with both hands nervously. It was only one stalk of a flower, and it was the very common poinsettia, but it was very fresh, and there were even dewdrops on the petals, making the flower look like it was freshly picked. Oh, it was indeed freshly picked. Georgina saw a poinsettia tree not far away with flowers blooming, but the tree was a little tall, and the flowers were all very high up. The thought of Harrison tiptoeing, trying his best to pick the flower with his bulky size made Georgina smile. She found it very warm. Moreover, he had been holding that flower, standing there for such a long time, and waiting for her to arrive. What a strange feeling! In the past, she would be the one waiting stupidly by the road, waiting for a silhouette that might pass by. She gave him the most precious thing that she cared about to him, but had her dignity trampled in return time and again. Right now, someone was actually willing to wait for her here and give her flowers. When I came just now, I thought that it looked very beautiful, so I thought of picking one to give it to you, Harrison explained with a chuckle. What he did not say was that when he was picking the flower, he was caught by the old man patrolling the square, and was given a fine of 100 copper coins. Thank you. Georgina received the flower, and put it to her nose to take a whiff. She smiled brightly, and said, "It smells so good." Harrison smiled like a 150 kilograms fatty. Georgina looked up, and asked Harrison, "Where should we go now?" "Ah, we're going to look for the famous snacks in SAHDR Alley. You might remember that small snack stall that sells fried little biscuits the size of a copper coin. It's very crispy and fragrant," Harrison said with a smile. Georgina's eyes lit up immediately. She nodded her head, and said, "I do." It was sold by a bald old orc. Their biscuits came in different cute shapes like rabbit, tortoise, and fish. I loved it when I was young. Yes. The stall had moved to Aden Square. I'll bring you to look for him. It's just right ahead, Harrison said as he pointed in front. All right. Georgina nodded as she turned to walk forward expectantly. When Georgina turned around, Harrison gave himself a slap as he cursed himself silently. Champion at imagining, idiot at doing. The pose that he had planned was not done, he spoke like a fool, and acted like an immature 18-year-old. This first experience in dating was such a failure. He snuck a glance at Georgina's face, and was worried that her impression of him would drop. Georgina held the flower in her hands, and she could not stop smiling. Mr. Harrison still made one feel very comfortable. Although she could tell that he was a little nervous, it was rather cute to her. Even the little duck embroidery on his chest was very cute. What a warm person! Both of them walked forward with their minds full of thoughts. After a while, Georgina suddenly stopped walking. She turned back to look at Harrison, and asked, "Where's the stall?" Harrison, who had been staring at her while walking, suddenly came back to his senses. He looked left and right, and then pointed to the back as he said, "It's in that little alley. I think we overshot." It was a rather narrow alley between two lavish restaurants. The alley was rather inconspicuous, and it was used as a pathway for those who lived behind Aden Square. Georgina walked to the alley, and she could suddenly hear noises from within. In the narrow alley, there were more than 10 stalls lined up, with many customers standing around the stalls, eating. There were also stall owners selling their food loudly. A familiar atmosphere engulfed Georgina. "What's the taste like? Let's go see what's there inside," Harrison said with a smile. After entering the alley, his confidence grew. This was his stage. As a true blue chowhound, although he had shifted his focus to Mamie restaurant recently, he was the foodie of the Chaos City streets before that. He witnessed SAHDR Alley's prosperity and decline. Even though there was a lifespan to the food sold in an alley, a delicacy would not die out just like that. Because as long as the delicacy was unique enough and delicious enough, no matter where it went, it would still be able to earn new fans and attract old fans again. The decline of SAHDR Alley caused a revolution in the street stalls there. Those selling mediocre food regretfully saw the end of their business, while those with a good reputation continued their glory elsewhere. That was what happened to the small biscuits sold by Taslim. Taslim was a bald, middle-aged orc. He was big and tall. His stall was right in the middle, but with him there, the stall became very outstanding. "It really is him. Georgina said with surprise when she saw Taslim at a glance. The first stop for today. Let's start from the little biscuits. Harrison brought Georgina to Taslim's stall. In a little bamboo basket beside him, there were 3 rows of little golden brown biscuits arranged neatly. Each biscuit was only the size of a baby's fist, and came in shapes like a little rabbit, little tortoise, and little goldfish. They were very cute and adorable. Do you want some little biscuits? Taslim asked with a smile, but his hands never stopped all the while. He kneaded a small ball of dough in his hands, and made it into a little rabbit. After that, he placed the rabbit dough into a pot of oil slowly to fry it. The entire process was very smooth. Georgina nodded. The middle-aged man spoke just how she remembered from her youth. Even the smile on his face had not changed. She remembered that when she first bought the little biscuit from the stall, she was so scared by him that she cried. The middle-aged man was so flustered, and gave her a little rabbit before she was cajoled. However, the orc mister who watched her grow up seemed to be unable to recognize her anymore. That made her inevitably a little upset. Mr. Taslim, Miss Georgina used to be your regular in the past. Can't you recognize her? Harrison told Taslim with a smile. He was also Taslim's regular. Taslim slowed down. He stared hard at Georgina for a while before exclaiming, "Little rabbit? Why have you grown so skinny?" Little Rabbit was Taslim's special nickname for Georgina, and it was because of that little rabbit back then. The warm and familiar nickname made Georgina smile. I've grown skinny because I haven't had Mr. Taslim's little biscuits for a long time. Here, have a little rabbit. Taslim picked up a little rabbit with his long chopsticks, and wrapped it in cowhide. Thank you. Georgina received the little biscuit, just like how the young girl did while sobbing back then. Crunch! Georgina bit onto the rabbit's head. The little biscuit which had cooled down was crunchy, yet it did not get stuck between the teeth. The more Georgina chewed, the more fragrant it got. The sweet fragrance blossomed in her mouth slowly with a hint of milky scent. Georgina remembered that long sitter alley in her childhood. After school, her mother would hold her little hand, and bring her to every stall. A tear rolled down the corner of Georgina's eye. She looked up, and happened to meet Harrison's gaze. Is it so good that you feel like crying? When I just found Mr. Taslim's little biscuits, I was like this too, Harrison said with a smile. It's good. Georgina nodded as she smiled happily. She seemed to have understood that this world wasn't that cold. Some people would never turn around for you. All they would give you was their back and hurt. However, some people would always give you warmth. Here, little rabbit, little tortoise, and little goldfish. I have all of them packed up for you. The same serving as before. Taslim passed Georgina a paper bag filled with little biscuits. Thank you. Georgina received the paper bag to search for her purse. It's fine. Now that you know that I'm here, come and have more again next time. Taslim waved his hand with a smile. I watched you grow up, and hoped that you could turn back into that plump and adorable darling. I will work hard. Georgina nodded with a smile. In that case, let's eat while we walk. I'll bring you to the next place, Harrison told Georgina. He turned back, and put a silver coin on the stall table as he winked at Mr. Taslim. Mr. Taslim was slightly stunned. After that, he smiled and gave Harrison a thumbs up. Have some too, Georgina said with a smile as she opened the paper bag, and passed it to Harrison. Sure. Thank you. Harrison held a small tortoise, and threw it into his mouth. Nodding while chewing, he said, This is the taste. It hasn't changed since years ago. What's our next target? Georgina looked at Harrison expectantly. You'll know once we're there, Harrison said. Okay. Georgina nodded, and took out another little biscuit to eat as she smiled even more brightly. The magic potion shop. What amazing nature magic! It could even make dead plants come back to life. Amy lay on the table, and watched how the plant in the pot turned green with Annie's magic. On top of that, the plant was growing very quickly, and had taken up the entire space in the pot. It is pretty good. You've improved a lot. Zixi looked at Annie with satisfaction as she put the pot on the ground. Ugly Duckling came over to take a sniff. It bit on a tiny grass blade, and started eating. Ugly Duckling, is it good? What's the taste like? Amy asked curiously. Meow. Ugly Duckling nodded while eating. Amy reached her hand out to pick a small blade of grass. She put it in her mouth, and chewed for a while before nodding in agreement. It's a little sweet too. If Boss Mag saw this, he would think that I'm abusing you. Zixi looked at Amy speechlessly. Mag only watched from afar, and did not disturb Alia and the rest at work. There were 12 employees at the stall. Alia had to have deployed 2 other employees to manage the high work volume. The good-looking elves with their gentle demeanor and swift actions managed to form a beautiful scenery at Little Sys seafood shop. I was right about her. Mag watched the highly efficient seafood stall, and nodded with satisfaction. It seemed like this last-minute appointed manager had no problem coping at all. Meanwhile, Mag smiled when he saw the housewives craning their necks as they watched the tutorials seriously. He loved people who were passionate about learning. Say, is this really delicious? Has anyone tried it? A young housewife asked curiously. I bought 250 grams of octopus tentacles yesterday, and tried making the stir-fried octopus tentacles at home. Although I didn't do it as well, I added too much salt, and burnt it a little. The taste is really awesome. My husband and son never dared to eat the food I made, but they actually finished the burnt food yesterday. That sense of satisfaction is immense. Sis, go learn it quickly, a big and tall housewife said. Yes, learn it and whip up something good so that your husband would go home early after work. The young housewife at the side nodded. I'm here today to solidify my learnings. I made a few mistakes in some steps yesterday, but the food still came out better than what I usually make. I came today with a notebook just to take notes. Mag walked past and nodded with satisfaction. Such eager learners were the best. Hopefully, there would be more people like that. Mag circled around the area, bought a few snacks that looked pretty good, and brought the food to the magic potion shop. The moment he entered the shop, he saw Amy squatting on the floor, eating grass with Ugly Duckling. What's going on? Mag looked at the 2 little fellows. Although the pot of grass was fresh and green, it was, after all, a pot of grass. Ugly Duckling could have a little to aid its digestion, but what was Amy doing eating the grass as well? Had the food at home become that bad recently? Father, this grass is really delicious. Do you want to try some? Amy looked up at Mag as she chewed on a blade of grass. She stretched out her hand to offer Mag another blade of grass she pulled out. Mag did not want to try it. However, seeing Amy's expectant gaze, he had no choice but to bend over, and take the blade of grass from Amy. After that, he put it into his mouth and chewed on it. The grass was very fresh and tender. After chewing on it, juice started seeping out. It was rather sweet and refreshing, and was actually quite good. Isn't it delicious? Amy asked expectantly. It is pretty good. Mag nodded. He saw Amy reaching out to grab a bunch of grass blades for him, and quickly stopped her, saying, Look, I brought you guys some delicious food. Let's leave the grass aside for now. Although the grass was delicious, it was still rather strange for a grown man, a cat, and a child to eat it. Therefore, Mag quickly lifted the bag of snacks in his hand to entice Amy. Indeed, Amy's gaze was immediately attracted to the snacks. She took the bag of snacks over from Mag, and thanked him. After that, she ran over to a small table at the side, and even called Annie an ugly duckling over to join her. Annie just learned how to expedite growth, and this pot of grass was the result of her learning. I didn't expect Ugly Duckling and Amy to like it. The grass is not poisonous, and having a little of it could aid digestion, so I didn't stop them, Zixi explained to Mag. It is pretty good. Even I would like some more, Mag said with a smile. He looked at Annie, who had a little drumstick in her hand as she sat beside Amy, and said, I didn't expect Annie to learn magic so quickly. Annie is really talented in magic. On top of that, she seemed very adept at nature magic. I almost suspected if she was a lost child of the Dryads. Zixi looked at Annie with satisfaction. After that, she turned to look at Mag, and asked softly, Where did you meet Annie? I met this child in the snowy plains. I don't think she belongs to the Dryads. Mag shook his head with a smile. He stared dotingly at Amy and Annie, who were eating their drumsticks happily, and said, Now, she's my child. Tisk. Go on boasting. I am not at all envious. Zixi caressed her stomach and smiled lovingly. Zixi, are you pregnant? Mag looked at Zixi's stomach in shock. He did hear about Zixi and Lulu wanting to have a child. Speaking of which, I still have to thank you for it, Zixi said with a sweet smile. Hey, hey, hey! Don't say such things. Mag quickly waved his hands, and took a quick glance at the door to check if Lulu had returned. What are you thinking of? I mean that I have to thank you and Princess Irina for curing me so that I can have this child, Zixi said with a smile. You're welcome. Mag shook his head with a smile. He was genuinely happy for this couple who wanted to revive the Dryads. Amy chewed on the drumstick, and walked over to Mag with another drumstick in her hand as she said seriously, Father, Master said that there were a lot of baddies outside the city recently. You have to eat more and wear more to look big and fat. That way, you can make the baddies scared. That does sound reasonable. Mag received the drumstick with a smile and bit on it. The drumstick was fried pretty well. The outer layer was slightly hard, but it was still quite crispy and fragrant. The meat was also very tender. It was one of the good snacks that he gained from the delicacy extravaganza. Of course, it would be even better if there was a pint of beer to go with it. The two children still had to attend classes, so Mag ate with them for a while before leaving for the restaurant as he got ready for the afternoon operations once again. Firis was the first to arrive at the restaurant because Mag had decided to teach her how to make the tofu series food other than the roast beef kebab and pepper steak. Anna was also early because she had requested to sit in to learn how to make tofu pudding. Mag had no reason to reject the ladies who were more interested in cooking than magic. Soybean is a very magical ingredient. Whether you make it into a refreshing cup of soybean milk or a bowl of silky tofu pudding, they all start from a soybean. Mag grabbed a handful of soybeans that had been soaked in water as he began his class. Based on what the system said, to become the god of cookery, other than gaining more believers, he would also need to have more people learning how to cook from him. He would still need to really integrate himself to find different ingredients in this alternate world to create different delicacies. Therefore, this was a new challenge and a new journey to Mag. The restaurant was doing good, the customers were nice, and such a relaxed life would make one unwilling to leave this comfort zone. However, Mag was still rather looking forward to this challenge. He also wanted to really understand this ancient and mysterious land. He wanted to seek out the mysterious and unknown ingredients, try all the delicacies in this world, and gain more inspiration. This would create a spark of creation between the delicacies on Earth and the delicacies in this world. After that, he would turn this spark into a delicacy flame, and set the entire land ablaze. Just the thought of it made Mag find it interesting. Of course, there was another very important reason. He needed some time to try to look for the possible places where the great old ones were sealed on this land. He had to seal them back up before they broke through the seals. He was beginning to like this world, and he would not allow anything to destroy it. However, before that, he could not let the customers who had gotten used to eating at Mamie restaurant down. Therefore, he needed a successor. Firas, who was hard-working enough, was his first choice. Under Mag's teaching, Firas improved very quickly. Mag did not expect her to learn all the dishes within a short amount of time, but he hoped that she could learn at least one or two of the more representative dishes of each type of dish. That way, even if he was no longer in the restaurant, the customers could still enjoy different kinds of delicacies. However, it was obviously not enough to have Firas alone. Harris and Chapman, who had been living in Chaos City for a long time, were already on Mag's helper list. These two were passionate lovers of cooking. On top of that, with Firas's experience in cooking, Mag would not have to worry at all with the three of them helming the kitchen. Tofu pudding was a dish that required preparation beforehand. Mag explained and demonstrated the steps to Firas and Anna in an even more detailed manner than the recipe he received. On top of that, he added some of his personal experiences and learning points, which was his further upgrade to the almost perfect recipe. It might be only a 0.01% improvement, but it was still something. Alright, now the tofu pudding is ready. All we need to do is wait for it to take shape. Mag used his finger, and flicked their heads. Firas and Anna, who did not really understand what they heard, felt something rush into their heads. The unclear information was like dim light bulbs that were all lit up suddenly and joined together. Now do you understand? Mag looked at the two of them with a smile. Firas and Anna nodded at the same time. All right. Today's lessons will end here. Digest everything that you've learned today, and we'll try making it in the afternoon, Mag said with a smile. He clapped his hands, and got Firas to start preparing the ingredients. Outside the restaurant, the customers started to form a long line. Milo, who had still been excited in the morning, was now standing with his head hanging low defeatedly. Garland, who was standing behind him, was smiling proudly. Hey, bro Milo, why do you look so unhappy? Did your money pouch get stolen? Randy greeted with a smile. He happened to be diagonally behind Milo and Garland. How did you know? Milo turned around in shock. That's really sad news. Randy shrugged. He did not expect himself to guess it right. Yet. I thought about it all morning, and I just can't understand, how am I inferior to a damn money pouch? The thief chose to steal the money pouch, and not me. Milo nodded with resignation. Judging from your size, I doubt he could do anything to you too, Randy said with a smile. Milo sighed again, and said, speaking of which, I really pity that bro. The most worthless thing on me was that money pouch. Ever since last year when it tore, I have been treating it as an accessory. Although I did stuff many things inside, they were all small and light furballs. Those that were sewn inside the pouch. Randy raised his brows. That thief who took such a huge risk would probably break down after opening the money pouch. However, the thought that Milo actually used a fake money pouch to put on a false front made him feel that it was not easy as a middle-aged man. He could not help but recall those times he actually could not get his money for his work. There were only a few copper coins in his money pouch back then, but he had to put some small stones inside so that those beautiful ladies could take another look at his sagging money pouch and full pocket. Let the unhappy past pass. You didn't lose anything anyway. Cheer up, Randy said with a smile. Why don't we talk about how you found this job that calls for envy? I also want to be troubled over which house to collect rent from first every day. Milo looked at Randy seriously. Garland looked at Randy with even more interest. At the same time, he stroked his head filled with hair saplings with confidence. About that. It's rather complicated, Randy mumbled. In that case, let's start from how to become friends with a lady. That's easy. Just go up to her and confess, Randy replied. That's it. Milo was in disbelief. Most of the girls who reject you would usually say, you're a good person, but we aren't suitable for each other. Let's just be friends. Milo nodded. Look, although we failed in the confession, we succeeded in our goal. I see, got it. Milo nodded as though he was enlightened. So is that how you make friends with a lady? Milo asked again. Randy shook his head. No, I don't usually make friends with ladies. I like older, more sensible, good with their things and unclingy types. Oh, Milo did not really understand, but still nodded. Tisk, tisk. The youngsters nowadays. Think about it, just think about it. Garland shook his head, and looked as though he did not want to continue the conversation. Bro Garland, what's your take? Randy asked with a smile. Great minds think alike. Garland gave Randy a thumbs up with a knowing expression. He, the two of them smiled as they exchanged glances.